Which
Okay, this one is not on that.
We're not on.
What's that? What is going on here?
Oh, can't get the Zoom going?
So it is over there. This one is totally shut down. Let me see. Ah, that's okay. This is not harder than Hades here. Okay, let's see.
Get this chair up, but I'm on a stool.
Those are me. And my feet would be swinging. It says this app will no longer be supported after August of 2022. All right, we'll have an eye out on this waiting room.
So Melanie, can you see that from your view over there?
I can do it. I can do this. It's easier for me because I'm right on the end.
Let's see who comes in.
I was gonna say, we
So
can
if you
make
see someone in the waiting room, just wait.
Okay, we'll look for it.
I'll be like, let him in, let him in. And I'm gonna just put them on. Sorry, I'm not the most technologically.
There it is.
There it is. Hold on.
Danny, to your right.
They're on the same remote, so if you don't get them both on at the same time. it's pretty easy.
All right, 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, I won, Danny.
No, now yours is off again. One of you can stand over here and turn a bulb on.
Here, I'll take
Problem is, you gotta get both of them under control the first time.
There you go.
There we go. All right.
5/2024, I'll have that down. All right. All right, welcome, everybody. All right, seeing that it's after 6:30, I would like to call the Town of Belgrade Board of Select Persons July 29, 2022 meeting to order. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone, for attending. Like, ah. All right, so the first part of our meeting is always public comment. Is there anyone that has something they'd like to bring to the board's attention that will not be covered on this evening's agenda? All right, seeing none, we're going to move right on to old business. So first up, we have a review of the July 5, 2022 meeting minutes. I'll take a motion to open that.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Barbara, seconded by Carol. That is open for discussion.
I have a couple things under public comment. It says the Sun Seasons parking lot was being used by business owners. Do we need business patrons or marina patrons?
I think we could say business patrons. And then on the second page, on the top line, just a grammatical, recreation policies and submit their proposed revisions to the board at a later date. At a submitted. And then on the end of the third page, just grammatical, again, under town manager updates, he will draft an RFP. We have and.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it would be a good idea to spell out things like LRAP, so that people reading the minutes know what that is, or BHS, DOL.
Yeah,
Seems like, you know, people who were at the meeting might remember what those things are, but people who aren't at the meeting might want to have them spelled out.
yeah, that's probably not a bad idea, because sometimes I'm like, what's that acronym? Ding, ding, ding. You try to go through it in your brain. So I think that's easy enough. Is there anything else on?
And we did decide that the meeting was going to be the Santa Claus season because we've since seen that there's a conflict with that night. So,
That'll be coming.
okay.
Talk about the conflict with.
Yeah.
I don't know that, I just heard about it this morning. I received it this afternoon.
Okay, because I thought we were clear on that one.
We thought we were too.
Okay. So, seeing no other discussion, I'll take a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve the July 5, 2022 meeting minutes
Second.
as amended. Moved by Melanie, seconded by Carol. All those in favor, Barbara,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Ricky,
Yes.
Dan?
Yes,
All right, 5 yeses, those are in. Okay, next up, we have a review of the July 11, 2022 Select Board meeting minutes. We'll take a motion, to open that item.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Barbara, seconded by Carol. That's open for discussion.
The only thing I would question is if we exited the executive session at 8:59 and we adjourned at 8:32, I think there might be
time wrong on
a little timing issue there. We may have done some time traveling during the meeting.
Must be 20 transposition.
I was, yeah, 8:29.
8:29.
No,
It's probably flip.
no, it was, that one I actually wrote on here, 6:30 to 8:59, so we would have adjourned at 8:59. We exited the executive session and then adjourned
At the same time.
at the same time. We didn't hang out for that extra minute.
I
All
move
right,
we approve the minutes as amended.
I'll second that. Moved by Carol, seconded by Melanie. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Ricky,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
All right. 540 against, those are approved. Okay, next up, we have discussion with All States Material Group about the overrun on the east-west lane shimming. Take a motion to open that item.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Carol, seconded by Barbara. Okay, so because we're doing the meeting remotely as well, before anyone speaks, just identify yourself, your full name, so that it can become part of the meeting minutes. And stand up if possible, because the meeting now hears you much better that way. And doesn't put a big blind spot in front of your face, we've discovered. All right, so Ricky, you had asked for if there was any sort of an adjustment that could be made. I'll read into the meeting minutes. July 13, 2022, Dear Dennis, from Doug Fowler from All States Construction. I've met with Ron Simbari to see what additional adjustment we may do to the overall cost of the shim work completed on East-West Lane. We concluded that All States Construction will deduct an additional $1,500 off the final bill to further reduce the impact on the town's budget. By doing so, the town is only being charged for the additional asphalt material placed, not for the services labor performed. The adjustment equates to $6,837.71 over the original estimated $30,853.20 cost for the shim work. We sincerely hope this additional adjustment is ultimately acceptable by the town and that it is perceived as All State Construction's commitment to customer satisfaction. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Sounded pretty good.
Rick, did you have any questions?
No, not really.
Are you happy with it? With an adjustment? I know we're not gonna be happy, but
It's better than nothing. I mean, we're gonna go on with this and go on with this. We just gotta decide what we're gonna do and either pay it or not pay it, one or the other.
Dennis?
I just wanted to point out that there was a lot of difficulty in estimating that shim work. I talked to the state. It's not an exact science. All right. That's number one. Number two, I may have failed to mention to you a letter that we received that I do not have available, where they had made an earlier adjustment up front before they even came to the 850. It was an adjustment of $450 off the original price of $110.17, $110.17. That moved it down to $105.69 that they were charging for the material. Across the board, that's the whole 390 tons, not just the excess. So that was their original reduction. So there was two reductions.
Yeah, it's the first time seeing of that as well. We love being the last to know.
And I think we both learned, just to comment, I think we both the town and the company has learned something about this process. The shim work was really a write-in. It wasn't actually in the sale, the bid proposal. As I understand it, and I looked at it, that's the way it appeared as well. So they've learned something about that, and we've learned something about the process.
And then what we don't want to do is tie our hands in a warrant article so tightly that we can't unbind them. Yeah,
I say pay it, be done with it. We could go on forever with this. That way we get that money go road done.
Is Jason
All right.
happy with that? Is
Yeah,
our
Jason.
road
Yes,
commissioner
I've talked
happy?
to Jason. I've talked to Jason, he's on board.
I think he's here on the phone. You want to pipe in, Jason? I think you might have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I think we should just pay it and finish the road. We got to finish it. At least they dropped the price some. So for future reference, now we know to watch out for this stuff.
Yeah, so we should overestimate our estimates.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll make the motion, we pay that bill.
Okay, so the motion is that we pay $6,837.71, which, and if we paid the 30,853 yet? I think that
We
was,
paid the, I think we paid the.
We paid the original bill
amount.
minus the original invoice minus the 8,000.
okay,
So what to do is the 687.50.
Okay.
I'll second that.
6837.71. Okay, so Ricky made that motion, Dan seconded it. There's no further discussion. All those in favor? Dan,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes,
Carol,
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes,
All right, 5 yeses.
Melanie,
Yes,
where is the money coming from to pay that? Out of the regular road budget?
yes. Sorry, Jason. That pen is toast. All right. Thank
Thank you all very
you.
much.
We appreciate,
Thank
tell
you.
Tom that we said,
See you soon.
tell we said thank you and
Not on the same issue.
we appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, next up, we have Maine DOT's Belgrade Cooperative Agreement revised for the Belgrade water system. This is the revised agreement. I'll take a motion to open that item.
so
Second.
Moved by Barbara, seconded by Carol. That is open for discussion. Danny,
Yes, of course, this is my first real involvement in this particular agreement. I received the agreement and I forwarded it to you folks. The attorney also made comments, which I think you have on the table in front of you. I don't think it got out to you in time for the packet.
no, I haven't had a chance to read this yet.
So I've gone through the agreement and talked about my concerns, et cetera, with the attorney. We've come to some sense, there are some minor clerical stuff, word clarifications, which we don't need to get into right now. Purpose isn't to put this up for consideration and approval tonight. It's just bring it to your attention, understanding that this is a process. I've asked Mary to set up a time schedule going back from the November elections to show what we need to get done in that time period.
I appreciated that.
So I'm going to be working on a warrant article that covers at least kind of, assuming that the agreement is okay and everything, that basically allows for the folks, the town folks to vote, and the warrant article will cover the issues that were raised by the attorney, including whether or not you can waive permit fees and stuff like that. There's a couple issues that were raised there, so we'll look at that. I've talked to the Maine PUC because there's some question about whether or not, there was some question about whether or not this is governed by the PUC regulatory process. I believe it is. I have got some information from the PUC and I've sent some information to her so that we can work that out. But I believe it will be covered by the PUC regulatory process. There's nothing in the legislation that prevented that from happening. In other words, the legislation just is a regular setup for a regular water district. It didn't exempt the town from any regulatory
No,
authority.
because of the fees charged and stuff, it has to be regulated. by the
Right.
PUC.
There is, I also talked to the Maine Rural Water Association. I don't know, I've heard reference to our consultant. That's, I've seen it in some documentation. I don't know if the Rural Water Association is our consultant. I assume that they play some role. And I know Kirsten, I've talked to her, I've sent her the agreement to look at as well. We do need to spell out a couple issues, but we'll get to that, I'm sure, as the process goes on. I don't want to go through all of my notes because I have quite a few notes. But
So when you're doing your notes, Denny, are you putting them in on the hard copy or are you doing
I
what I
did-
do, where I sort of put stuff on the side?
I did an old fashioned way.
Yep, me too.
I've given them to Phil. I don't know how you want this process to proceed now. I mean, we have deadlines. And so at the next board meeting, there should be a review and discussion. So we should be able to get some stuff together. Well, this is, why did she say July 21st?
That's
I'm
today.
sorry, it's-
Right, right.
Oh, yeah, me too, right.
confusing. At the August 2nd board meeting, there should be review and discussion of the questions you have, the issues that you raised, that I raised. I don't know if you want the attorney here to be part of that discussion, to answer questions that you may have. I'll do my best to get everything next week that I think is necessary for you to move forward on it, but I just don't know how you want that to go.
I would probably be, have Phil here
I would think
for
so.
that.
And then he can cover any issues that have come up since then, if they're happening.
Yes.
Hi, just a logistical thing, there's a person waiting to come in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching that for us.
So I also have got copies of, there was a similar type of salt contamination. And I don't know if DOT was involved. There was a similar contamination, I think it was oil or some kind of contaminant in New Gloucester. So I've got all of the information about that, so that when it comes to writing terms and conditions, et cetera, dumping rates, that information is available here. So that's about it. So I mean, if you want anything else, or how you want other things to be done.
I know they also went over and looked at Reed Fields. Not
Right.
Reed Field, Reed-
Yeah,
Reed Field.
refill.
Reed Field's got a water system because of salt contamination too, so.
From salt
Yeah,
contamination.
so
But
Jack,
they,
Jack and a bunch of people went over and looked at that.
Theirs
right?
wasn't from salt. Theirs was from the leakage from the gas station
Okay.
that used
That's
to
But,
be
the-
nearby.
but either way, I mean, I think they're charging, or aren't they charging for stuff too?
They do charge.
So I mean,
well, that's an issue of concern to me. I mean, currently the estimate for operations on an annual basis is 36,000. I think we have how many, 14?
I think it's
Yeah.
14.
You
this
set
one was
rates, and of course,
13.
rates are set. It's not this simplistically, it's a process. But if you just divide 14 into 36,000 a year, that's a lot of expensive water. So you have to make a decision about how you want that to proceed. Should the town participate in some of that rate
and,
or not?
and during our discussion, it was that the people were gonna have to pay a fee, but the town was gonna have to, because of our responsibility, we're gonna have to pony up some.
So essentially what we had left out at Denny was that what's the average amount of water that a household would use on a regular basis? What we didn't want is necessarily for someone to hook onto the public water system and then put up a CSA garden. And now they're using much more volume
Yeah.
than any of the other
Yeah.
users. So it was, this is what's normal.
Yeah.
We're willing to push in a little bit above normal if need be, but if you exceed that, then there would be a cost
Yeah.
involved.
There was-
That's where the main rural water
Yeah,
association. comes
Right,
from.
because the original thing we were talking about, making they were gonna have to pay to cover. They knew that even if you have to go in private well, you have to pay electricity for your pump and you have, so we were gonna try to charge them the equivalent of that. And then if they had exceeded a certain amount, then they're gonna have to stop
Well,
paying.
it sounds like that, I don't want to take a lot of time on this particular item today, but I just want to bring to your notice, the timeframe is on it, all that lengthy. And they DOT would like to get this moving forward. And I think it's only fair to the potential consumers of this water that they get this water as quickly as possible as well. So I'll try to make sure that I leave sufficient information when I leave. There's a packet here. And we'll see how that all works.
And where will the packet be?
Huh?
Where will the packet be?
No, I'll make sure.
No, just checking.
No, it won't be with me. It will be here.
And as far as the proposed amendments, are the proposed amendments already in this?
No, if anything comes up that really is serious and you need, we'll have to work it out with DOT because they have to agree to it.
And is there anyone here from DOT? Okay, I wasn't sure if Doug, who just joined, if maybe he was a representative. I'm surprised that they weren't here at all tonight. So let's see what I had. So Exhibit A, this has stumped me every time we get one of these. We
They're
don't,
not attached.
No,
I didn't
they
see those.
they haven't been attached
Just,
from the get-go.
well, I know it's from reading it, it would seem to me that they were just what we understand to be impacted parties.
Right. But
So it's in that
my
area.
thought is that this packet goes out to anyone who's requested that they get the packet. And over and over again, they don't see what the impacted area
Okay, well, I'll get
is.
that. I mean, we can get that. I
Yeah,
just
so
didn't realize-
we can get a copy of that. And then I had. So on page 3 of 14, there's this question of recognized lot 62A. It says that is deleted. And then I believe 62A comes up a little bit further down.
Do we know what lot that is?
And what is lot 62A?
What number? Oh, I see it at the top.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why we need that.
right. That's why we need that attachment. But then we have under item II, impacted properties not included in subsection I and II above are eligible to be connected to the water system in the future. And it says they've deleted on a case-by-case basis, but I don't see what is in that place.
I think they just deleted that.
Right, so it simply looks, could be connected in the future if they become effective.
Yeah,
So, so everybody's noticed, of course, that the cost increased to 3 million.
What was it when we started to?
2.2.
Yeah.
it's not the field.
So page 4. We've heard over and over again, what's Plan B? So DOT has finally given us a Plan B, and Plan B says the parties agree that if the municipality is unable to secure the necessary municipal approval to enter into this agreement shall be of not force and effect, and the parties will proceed with an alternate means of resolving the groundwater contamination impacts up to and including purchase of the impacted properties and relocation of affected occupants, with the parties sharing equally in all such costs. So that is,
That's one of the paragraphs sometimes. we'll look at.
yeah, so that's, we've tried to figure out what Plan B was gonna be, and this is what they're proposing as Plan B.
Well, that's Plan B, but we don't have a Plan B if the well goes dry.
Correct.
That's,
Right, that's the Plan B we've been talking about.
that's the Plan B we
Right.
want to know.
And I talked to Doug Dowdy about that, and he said, well, right now, there is no alternative other than digging another well. Right, to find another well, so I don't know how you would specify an alternative other than that, I just don't know.
Well, and if it's out of what, 10 years, is that what the agreement is? That happens in year 12, it's going to be totally our cost based on what this says.
Which is where,
Oh,
I mean, we're not comfortable. They started with 5, we said 15 to 20.
yeah, and they
Now
came
we're
back at 10.
back at 10.
Um, Trying to think where it is.
Yeah, what was that?
Yeah, well, if you look at that section, when they talk about that 10 years,
And which
What
page
page
is
is
that?
that, Dan?
12 or 14.
12 or 14, yeah, number 8.
You know, it's ongoing between both of us. If we don't have any new impacted properties within that 10 years. So I think what's happened is they're figuring that 10 years from now, if that salt hasn't gone anywhere else, you're not gonna have it going anywhere else.
Well, also, there are provisions, if you go later on, that talk about anything new, there's an agreement to work together to resolve, to come to a new agreement. So we'd have to,
I guess my concern is I don't want them off the hook if the well goes dry in year 12.
I don't think they will be, given the statements in the last part of the agreement.
I guess that's where I want to see it in the agreement. Someone can tell me where that is.
Yeah.
Or
I'm
the
trying to
attorney can
find
tell
that.
me where
I'm
that
trying
is.
to find it right now.
Did you ever have that problem?
George?
George Seal. Part of my career at DEP, I negotiated about 15 of these types of agreements, but I was sitting where DOT sits, and I definitely agree you want as much specificity in these agreements, because right now the town has more bargaining power than it ever will after you sign it. Along those lines, there are a couple of issues that I saw where the agreement, at least not all the comments, but the agreement itself kicks the can down the road. One is the issue you're talking about, what happens in the event that the well becomes contaminated. I only looked at this briefly earlier today, one thing to consider is in the wellhead protection area that you're going to have to set up to protect that source water. You have not only salt contamination close proximity, but you also have petroleum. You have a number of petroleum tanks there, and they have had leaks in the distant past, but they haven't had any. This agreement my recommendation is the agreement also hold DOT accountable in the event that there's a petroleum spill that contaminates that well. I mean, they can go after the responsible party, but they're the ones that located the wells. They're the one that conducted the pump test, and those weren't town decisions. And this is the water supply they're offering to the town. We should have an assurance that it's going to be safe over its lifespan, and that includes free from all sources of contamination, not just salt. I mean, the pump test was very well done, and is a pretty good assurance of what will happen in the short term, but things change. Groundwater flow changes depending on where people put in new wells and all kinds of other things, including climate change and more rainfall. So there's just too much that's unknown. The town should have some pretty firm assurances there, and it should include petroleum contamination. In fact, it should be for any kind of contaminant. You know, what if a hazardous waste truck spills over on the cemetery road?
Right.
I mean, DOT has some responsibility here as the developer of the well. So anyway, I would argue for, having more detail in the contract rather than less, and not delaying decision-making to sometime in the future, thinking that everybody's going to sit around a table and say, kumbaya.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Because I know Dwight White's a good guy, but he's not that far from retirement. I mean, you just don't know.
Right.
Well, in the end, we're gonna be dealing with new people at some point throughout this life expectancy.
That's right, at this end too. I would point out too, the Gloucester, that was a combination of gasoline and salt.
Yeah.
And in that case, DOT didn't have any financial liability. It all fell on the town of the Gloucester. I happen to be one of the project manager for that, and at the DEP end, because we shared in the cost of that water system.
Anybody
And
from DEP
Refield's entirely gasoline.
Anybody from EPA on this?
What's that? No. Well, that's why I had suggested and did a little research for Anthony to look into whether the oil spill down here contaminated any wells, because then there might have been a possibility to get DEP involved and cost share, but there no such luck. In a dark kind of way.
Would you be willing to write up some language, the way you think it should be written up, so we could look at it? Because if you've been on that end, on the opposite side, it might be.
Yeah, I could do that if that would be helpful.
Would be. That wasn't a thought that in conversation with them that hadn't even
Yeah,
occurred to me.
I did provide Anthony with some examples. I mean, DEP's got like 15 of these in their files. from, Tenants Harbor, to Harpswell to, Aquasic, Reedfield. Yeah, I can look at that.
George, would that include in the event, sort of a plan B, in the event that the well fails at year 12? If no one new comes in on 10 years, fine, but if the source fails after 10 years, that we still keep them responsible for sharing
Yeah,
in sort of what we're calling plan B.
you're talking that the quantity of water is inadequate.
Or, yeah, so that we end up with the system failing, but it's more than 10 years.
Yeah.
What do we do?
You can certainly, I mean, the sky's the limit, really. I mean, this is a contract, right? It's negotiations.
Isn't this the time to put that in to specify
I
that
think
they would
so.
share it?
I
in
mean,
what
I'm
way?
less concerned about that than I am contamination of that well. I mean, that's right in a pretty big aquifer. Part of it's significant sand gravel aquifer that runs all up and
Right.
down Great Pond Esker, but boy, if that goes dry, we're all in a world of hurt. But but now, if that's a concern of yours, then that's something that should be done now rather than kicking the can down the road.
I mean, if we agree on 10 years or 15, whatever we agree, I still think we should keep the well itself. Like,
DP
in a
used
different
to,
time.
we used to warranty the well for 5 years
mhm.
against contamination.
Yeah,
Because
I
we
think
don't
they- I
have
think they
another
wanted to
plan.
Reduce it down.
But in terms of the specific plan B, that's Dennis mentioned, that's very hard to do now unless you actually do the hydrogeological investigation to locate that backup well field. And that obviously hasn't been done. I think maybe the more appropriate approach is to spell out what the process will be and who's going to pay for what.
Right.
Is DOT going to pay for that water supply exploration as they have for this one, or is that going to be a cost share with?
What they did with this one, if you look at the end of the agreement, there is a cost sharing on that already for the initial.
Okay, so probably it'd be for that too.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find the exact language here, like, I'm having a hard time finding it, but there are some provisions in there. Anyhow, there are provisions in here where it says that something happens in the future, and
Well, I could take a look at it and share my thoughts with Dennis.
that'd be good. I want to trying to come up to speed on this will be difficult for any new town manager, so we want to make sure I can get it as tightened up as possible.
And we should have that for the next meeting as we're looking at the time frame, right?
I'd like to.
Yeah,
That's what
no,
I-
I'm just saying,
So if we could have your thoughts, George. so
yeah, that would be great.
That'll be August 2nd, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the August 2nd meeting, so that we can have a chance to take a look at it.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you, George.
And I'll see if I can get DOT here at that meeting too.
So there were a couple other things, Jenny, that I had marked. One of them was that okay, it was that page 11, under invoicing and payment schedule, where it says each invoice submitted will describe the completed work and itemize the associated costs included therein. The invoicing party will provide the supporting documentation to either party upon request. One of the things is that I want to make sure that we're getting continually updated information on what's being invoiced,
Right.
exactly how much the cost is. I don't like this, we get something quarterly and that we don't have any, we don't see anything in the meantime.
Well, somewhere in here, they talked about the current cost, but I had a question on, does this include the appliances that we replaced for Mrs. Burgess? And if that hasn't, made sure that that somehow
If you look
doesn't
at,
get lost.
if you look at the page 11, third paragraph down, you'll see the items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. Personal property and fixture settlements.
No, my question was, had we billed them for what we've already replaced, not what we're going to replace?
Well, I didn't know that you had actually.
We had,
these things.
yeah,
So
I
would
believe we
keep
had, I
receipts of that
believe it
because
was a
that's a
50-50
cost every
split.
year.
Yep,
Right.
I'm pretty sure that we did, because we checked with them first before we
Yeah,
we
because that's a
Yeah.
cost. sharing
purchased them
issue.
and
that
stuff.
was just the question to make sure that we don't lose that in all of this.
Most of them properties will have to be repiped, so.
Yeah.
well, most of the events are pretty well deteriorated.
That was 10 years.
So do we want that 10 years up to at least 15?
Mhm.
I do.
Cheryl does.
I'll be the mean one. I'm the one that wouldn't agree to 5 in the initial one, so.
Didn't we say 20?
We said 20 and they started with 5 and came back with 10. I was like, no.
Yeah. I
Let's
had that
let's go
one.
15. We're gonna split hairs on that one.
What
Well, the
the-
thing about it is DOT is gonna be gone out of there. And Belgrade's gonna have the sand and salt shed there. So if anything happens, guess who they're gonna blame? Town of Belgrade. So you're right, we need to go to 15 years. Just to make sure things stay on the right key. And about the appliance, we paid our 50%. I'm not sure the state has reimbursed us. You might want to check with the treasurer on that.
That's good.
I know they hadn't done it, but
Yeah, I was thinking that we paid for it and we were keeping track of it and that would come off what we had to pay at the end. I just didn't want us to lose that.
no, they were supposed to pay their 50% on everything that we bought.
Yeah, because I think it was, they had asked us to invoice them with the total amount and they would pony up
Pay
with
50%.
50%.
You're right.
Let me see.
I'll have that checked.
The other thing, is there anything, I didn't see anything in there about Pinkham's Cove. There's still some bad wells down there. And they
I
haven't-
did call DOT and they told me that their geologist believes that there is a section of ancient ocean under a portion of Great Pond, and they believe that those wells are impacted by that section, by that ancient ocean. So I raised that, I forwarded emails that I had received back in 2017 or 18 that identified the property down there. The ones, the new ones that we haven't even touched yet. One
May be true, but
on,
they blamed it on the sand and salt sheds when,
Yeah, well, according to the state says it's not the same salt.
yeah, that's.
It's a different salt.
Well, and that was also the original argument about how we could determine that it wasn't the current salt from that being a salt priority road that was more involved in the contamination that expanded from 2011 to 2018. So I don't know how we differentiate that when it's the same salt. But I would assume ocean salt would have a different composition than road salt.
I think they can tell it.
So, yeah, it does.
So,
It's a lot more denser, so.
well, and the other, glaring issue for me with this, Denny, and I've said it a million times, you probably haven't heard me say it, but one of the things that I stressed right from the beginning was that triangle cannot continue once we set up a public water system. That triangle cannot continue to be a salt priority triangle because they're literally dumping straight salt on that road all winter long.
Now, didn't, I thought I heard when I came back that salt priority has been abandoned by the town.
No, so
We're
what we
not
had
doing
done
that,
was
but
Route,
the state's doing.
Oh,
Right.
you're talking about the state.
right, because Route 135 was that one, and what was the other road that we were using, Ricky, as like salt priority
Blue brine
test?
and everything
It
else.
was Route 135, Williams Mills Road, Batter Road, Location Road, Millstream Road, and Nose Road. It's all south priority.
And then we backed off from that because we didn't
Almost the last
see,
thing watershed.
and we're looking at a different composition in our mix because we didn't notice that it was making enough of a,
Right, the last I knew, you had a very hot mix. It was mixed 5 to 2 or 3, something like that. It was a very hot mix.
I just, Bruce goes, my biggest concern, and of course, I send pictures, share quite often, is the town of Belgrade's housekeeping and DOT's housekeeping. Horrible. And if we don't control our housekeeping on our salt, then we're wasting a lot of taxpayers' dollars. And it's not just DOT, it's us too. I mean, I just sent pictures to you 6 weeks ago of
right,
salt running out
the
of,
dried salt left over.
running out of sand salt shed.
The front doors?
Yeah, it was a liquid running right down.
So essentially, as the building heated up
They
and
condensated.
it condensated and then created condensation inside, and then that caused the salt to liquefy and be running out from underneath that door. But then he also sent pictures this winter of,
Last
and
fall, DOT.
yeah, this fall, like just an actual salt stream that DOT had left.
I mean, like, it was that thick.
Yeah,
On the road.
No.
No,
Oh, no.
coming out of the yard.
Coming out of
When
their
they loaded
yard.
their trucks, they spilled it all the way coming out, so they had to trade.
And it lasted all weekend.
right.
Yeah.
And wasn't it
all
was a
weekend.
holiday weekend or
Yeah.
something? So nobody was gonna get there to do anything about it. They were just gonna
Labor Day
ask them to
weekend.
be more careful.
Yeah, there was 50 feet from the well that's gonna be used.
I'll raise those issues certainly, type of DOT, but those are things that will happen.
Anyway, yeah,
Right, but, you know, and so in talking to them in our public meetings, you know, they said, well, people like to have bare pavement. People also like to be able to drink their well water. So we can't have them invest money and then we're investing money and then we're continuing to literally just dump the salt directly around the impacted properties continually.
And I think that's a public education program too, to let them know that their roads with salt may be problems down the road, but
Right.
those are things we're not gonna solve tonight.
All right, did anybody else have anything else they want to bring back, or do we want to,
Get our lawyer here and go over this,
yeah,
come up with a final draft that we can present to DOT to see if they'll accept it. Finish our negotiations.
so does anybody else have anything that they want to address with this for tonight's meeting? All right, seeing none. We'll move on to new business. Okay, first item under new business is Stuart McConnell's appointment to the Library Board of Trustees. Hi, Stuart.
Hello,
Welcome.
thank you.
All
It's
right, I'll
good to
take
see
a
the
motion.
town is so well managed.
Thanks. All right, we'll take a motion to open that.
so move.
Be it.
Moved by Carol, seconded by Rick. All right, so this is where I usually put people on the hot spot and ask why it is they'd like to serve in this capacity.
You might know that I was involved in the library back 20 years ago when it was down in the rec center. And so I've been an active user and noticed that there was an opening and thought it would be interesting to get back into it and see if, you know, because it's really developed into a great resource for the town. So I'd like to participate.
We appreciate that.
That's an old application.
So you actually have an older application here, so on the new application, there's a checkbox stating that the town of Belgrade has a harassment policy that all the volunteers are required to read and agree to. So when you come in to get sworn in, as long as everybody here approves you, you'll want to probably ask for a new application or just have it attached so you can check that box.
Okay, I missed it, huh?
After you read the policy.
After you read the policy, of course.
Maybe I'm not a careful enough reader.
No, you got an old application. It doesn't have it.
Melanie, so
Oh.
his application has been in there for the last this is the third board meeting. So it didn't get approved, so it happened, he submitted it before the board put the rule on.
Right, which is what I was saying, is that he has an older application and the new one has that checkbox.
Mhm.
He had, the library board of trustees had to vet you for our Stuart, for lack of a better word. But now they say you're in, so.
Well, when I'm out of quarantine, I'll stop by.
Okay. In the meantime, you can read up on the harassment policy. All right, so if there's no further discussion, Barbara,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
all right, 5 yeses. Welcome aboard, Stuart.
Thank you.
Thanks for agreeing to sit on a board. We appreciate it. All right, next up, we have Belgrade Historical Society Storage Facility discussion. I'll take a motion to open that item.
Second.
Moved by Barbara, seconded by Carol. That is open for discussion. So,
This is the one we're
I'm
talking
Rod
about.
Johnson, on the, I would say the building committee of the Belgrade Historical Society. Been working on the old townhouse for quite a long time here. Coming well with that. One of the things that's happened to us is that a lot of people want to donate certain things, and we are out of space for storing things. I put a letter to you folks about a month ago, and I apologize, I wasn't here to sort of discuss it. And anyway, I was requesting the possibility of using some town land somewhere to put a small building on. And it turns out that one of the places we thought might work was up at the old townhouse, backed off into the woods a little bit. But the cemetery committee thought that probably wasn't such a great idea, and in retrospect, I agree with them. And I understand that, Scott, maybe you brought up the possibility of us using some of the space up at Noah's place, the garage. Is that not true?
Scott Darwin came to me. Yeah, Scott Darwin came to me
Yeah. I see.
and said, geez, that may, we're not using that bay, maybe that's the place that they could go, if they were willing to fix it up.
Yeah. So we're kind of begging for space. If there's some available that we might use up there, it would be wonderful. I did go up and look at it with Dan. It looks like, but a couple of those bays are being used now.
Well, a couple have storage items in them. There would be, we believe there'd be one that was free, they could build a wall barrier.
There'll be a petition between, it looks like a
So that
three-bay.
their material would not be intermingled with anything that the town is doing there.
So when I was up there the other day, Denny, looks like, so the bay on the far left, is that the one that the tenant has access
If you're
to?
looking,
So if we're in the front of the building,
yeah,
And
you're
you have
looking to the
the
left,
three
right
doors,
next to
yeah.
what the stairs where the tenant goes up on the inside stairs.
yeah,
Yeah, that bay, I don't know if the tenant still has access to that or not now, but they did have access to it at one point in time. The center bay, and then there's the far right bay where there's, it looks like some fire department stuff.
Yeah.
Some, there's hose or plastic pipe, I think that was cemetery stuff. So that would need to be moved. And I think Carol, you went up
I
with
did,
me.
yeah.
And you had suggested that you certainly thought that you wouldn't want the center bay taken by the Historical Society, given that there may be a need to store wider items.
Well, I was
That's-
saying the right bay would make more sense to me. So if the town kept the center bay and the left bay, if they had wider items. So instead of building 2 walls, you'd just be building 1 wall.
Yeah,
And
that did occur to me.
Yeah.
If we can do something there, obviously the middle one would be the toughest because you'd have to build 2 divided walls.
Right.
But if we are given the okay to use it, we would go with, we'll take care of the expense of building a wall, and there'd be no expense to the town. It would be,
and you'd probably want to secure the windows there.
Well,
Yeah.
Someone doesn't-
there's a couple pieces to it. So one of the things I wondered is how the items would be stored in there, because there's probably moisture and critters that are gonna be in there. If we already have an agreement with the tenant that they have access to that bay on the left, then that one's kind of a no-go, as long as that agreement is in effect. The garage doors aren't secured, you can just lift them, which my other concern with that would be, we've already lost a lot of historical stuff in the town of Belgrade, and I would hate to have that,
Have a
Happen.
repeat of that.
have a repeat of that.
Sure, yeah, it would have to be made secure, the question.
Yeah, so there were a few things that when I checked out the space, that was my thought was, we worried about folks having stuff stored in their barns and their sheds and things like that. And if we're able to have them corralled, I want to make sure that wherever we keep them, that they're as safe as we can keep them, because once they're gone, they're gone. And if that's not the best place for it, do we have any other ideas?
Well,
Initially, this was more about seeing if we could set a building, maybe one of these portable buildings, a small one, either at the town garage area, if not in the cemetery area. But this is by far would be 4 or 5 times as much square footage would be ideal for us if you folks agreed to let us do it. The only negative side I can think of for the Historical Society is that I assume there's no plan in the near future to sell that property. You're going to keep that because it's contiguous with the community center property,
Right.
most likely. So, I know, I don't know what the cost would be to secure it, but we can take care of it. All right.
And there-
Should be.
And I'd probably recommend an agreement being established between the town and the historical society relevant to what happens if things are destroyed, or what happens if.
Well, there's always fire. Most of the things that we have, I would say a lot of them are, we have a chance to take at least one of Camp Kennebec war canoes, which are sort of a thing of the past, they're wooden, they're canvas covered. We have the old one from the hotel, Belgrade Hotel now, up in this building, the old townhouse. But some of those bigger items like that would be, we can't really take them unless we have a place to put them.
Right.
And some of it, it's kind of a hard decision sometimes whether to take stuff or not, because is it really historical? Well, certainly that item appeals to us, but we don't have any place to put it, so. And I think we'd probably go some shelving in there, and we probably, if we need to, keep a dehumidifier in there. And then, there's the overhead door, we'd probably do some insulating and around it. I don't know what, I didn't look to see what
It's very
kind of
light.
condition you're in. Light duty,
A very light aluminum door.
aluminum doors, maybe some styrofoam on the inside, whatever. But, that kind of stuff we could do.
And what about locking that?
You'd have to come up with a security.
They come up with a way to lock it.
I mean, don't just allow, if they put in a garage door opener, that's gonna lock it.
Yeah.
That's all they do, put a garage door opener.
Yeah.
They can put an outside keypad to open it with.
Probably a company do that.
I mean, if they're willing to take on the expense, I mean, the only thing that could cost us some money, if they put in a dehumidifier and run that all summer long, dehumidifiers are expensive to run.
Right, and somebody's gonna have to, will
And
have
that's
to be
part of it.
piped to outside.
Right, plus it's also the electricity is hooked to the apartment, so we may have to figure out how to deal with that.
Right. So there may be a few logistics there.
And what about moving all of the town stuff? And there's a lot of junk that's up there.
Right, well, because there's mowers and snow blowers and that are stored there for
Lots of-
use on the
Lots of
property.
wood and that pipe.
Well, a lot of
Needs
that
to be
stuff, I
cleaned
think-
out anyway.
It needs to be cleaned out and gone through. A lot of that stuff looks like it was just put there. We don't have a spot here, and it's, oh, there's a spot.
It's probably a lot emptier than the last time I was in there, because the tenant upstairs had everything, all 3 bays loaded up, storing everything in it.
Those are all those, that's
That's
all.
all
He
outside.
still has it outside, which is another issue. but that's a different issue.
That's not this issue. I think we go ahead and let them do it and see if they can make it work.
And I think first we have to draw up an agreement.
Right,
And then,
right.
and just consider the logistics of it, and maybe you folks knowing that want to go up and take another look and make sure that that is the right spot. And the,
Get your estimates on what it's gonna cost you.
yeah, and we make sure that it's not specified which bay the tenant could have access to, or if they still do. So we'll need to check on that, the agreement with the rental agency.
I know the tenant always had the one near closest to the stairs because they had access to the entry door coming off the
Right.
stairs to get into where their car was.
For some reason,
Well, not only
heard
that, it's a
that
secondary
access-
exit for
that
them to leave that
storage
apartment.
kept pulled away.
I was thinking that someone told me that had been, but
It could.
What was that?
That the
that he
access to
didn't have
that
access
bay
anymore.
for
That
use
was the other
by the
gentleman, the one who was there
tenant
previous.
Was pulled away from it. No longer allowed. That's what I'll check it.
Okay. Yeah, so check on.
You think you'd like us to come back next meeting and just say, yeah, it looks good to us, we've got this plan. here's what
Yeah.
We think we could do.
I would let them get together with the town manager, come up with some kind of written agreement, and bring back to us at the same time.
Right, so I'm gonna say is my written agreement, and also I would like to check with facilities maintenance and just make sure that there would be enough space still in that building to store what they need to keep there for working on those grounds. You know, I don't want to take away,
That new garage should give them plenty of storage once that's enclosed. But having said that, I.
right, because it seems to me like some of the stuff that's there is kept there because it's used there more than it is, and maybe like the mower and the snow blower that's there is then used, you know, down to mow the village green or whatever. So I just want to make sure, I don't want to take away from something that the town may need it for to give to another town entity. But if we think that we can coexist there fabulously, then I'm all for a space where we can corral stuff and keep it safe from the elements and.
That would solve our problems for the next 2 years at least. Some of them.
We're a victim of our own success. Everybody wants to give us things. At least now you're finding out where stuff is. Because 20 years ago, it was kind of a crapshoot. Who's got what and where? All right, so next up, we have the Board of Parks and Recreation. We'll take a motion to open that item.
So moved.
Moved by Carol, seconded by Barbara. So first up, we have a parking issue with overnight parking at the Center for All Seasons. Dan, you have the floor.
Well, since there was a message sent, so there's been less of an overnight parking issue, so that, I would say it's quasi resolved. We do have people that have parked there, general public people, but I think that anything.
Right, so the businesses were contacted and told about the issue. I think you should have in front of you, I don't know if we did, but there was an email sent from Bob Gardner about the marina. Basically saying, look, we get it, here's what we're gonna do. I sent a message out to all my marina customers, told them what they were supposed to do and all of that. And I talked to Scott today about Sadie's. We said, we're gonna try to do whatever we can. We rope off the area that would allow access from the parking lot to their facility. And he said, we're gonna put up signs. So he said, we get what you're saying and we don't want to abuse it. So we're gonna try to work whatever we can to get that resolved. So they're very cooperative and I appreciate that from both Rob and Scott. And the other thing we might be able to do is move some of those stones, those big stones that allow for a path to go through. We might want to move those to kind of, they're close together, or put up a small fence there, I don't know. But so certainly signs, we should have parking for use by
It's a very tempting path right now.
So that's where we're at on that. I think, as Dan has said, that seems pretty successful so far in the short time that they put out the word, so.
Yeah, I thought it was a very nice email that he sent out to his customers.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we're checking the price of the signs.
I was just gonna
Versus
say,
signs,
we
so.
want to consider some signage.
The only problem you got though, that any property that the town owns is public property. People can park on it.
Well,
I understand we got a problem there, but you gotta understand, what are you gonna do if somebody parks it? We're not gonna be able to tow it. I mean, you just can't do that.
well, actually, Ricky, I believe you can, because even though it's public property, it's community property, but in essence, it's restricted because you have it for particular uses. So I think there is an ability for the town to, I know other towns do it, so I'm pretty sure there is an ability for the town to restrict parking to the facilities for the facility's purpose. It's not necessarily intended for anyone to go park there and put their, it's a, you know what I'm getting at. It's not something that's broadly used. For instance, as an example, you can restrict how close people put signs to the municipal properties, how they use municipal properties for free speech, because we have work our policies on that. So I do believe you can do that.
You can enforce parking, because it's just like the city of Augusta or whoever, if they own a parking lot, that's how they can charge. It's still public property, it's owned by the city, but they can charge for people to park there and tell you what time of day you can park there and anything else.
Or whether you can park.
Right.
I got one more thing to chime in on that is really brought this light was we have rentals. So we have people paying to use the facility, and those people, like, they, you know, we have a rental there that has 30 cars, 40 cars, they're gonna use a lot of the lot. And there was one rental that had to use the whole entire dirt parking lot, but most of their party was over 80, around 80 years old. So it was a super inconvenience for that party, and not negative or anything, but it was a learning experience. So they're paying to use it then.
I think we should have a no overnight parking sign. I mean, that sort of goes without saying. And I think we could come up with a sign that puts up when there's an event there that says event parking only. And when you have a rental, you use it for event parking only. And if there's no rental and someone wants to park there and they want to walk over, then I don't have a problem with that.
Well, the only problem that I can see with that, I disagree, obviously, but the only problem I see is who will know when there's an event that's, oh.
Well, you have a sign that would have to go out, like our event parking goes out on the street, and there would need to be something that says event parking only tonight or whatever.
Yeah, and
So parking for event attendees only or something, so you know on that period, and if we get renting it all the time, then, you know, but there'll be a lot of times when we're not renting it, that I feel it should be available.
I think Dan's looked into these things and
Yeah.
folding signs. Right?
Yeah. But the overnight parking should be a permanent one.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'd still
so,
prefer to see a sign that says parking for communities or public beach business only.
You said what, Dan?
Parking for community center business or public beach access only is what I would prefer to say. If not, they gotta deal with signs and letting people know when events are going on and everything else all the time.
well, and that's kind of my, I guess my only hesitation with having the signs be changed is that there's only so many folks who work for the Center for All Seasons. So if there are rentals in there for the weekends, do we have folks that are running up and flipping signs and pushing stuff out and changing signs for parking? You know, we don't want to create such an issue for the couple of folks that do work there either. So,
I think permanent signs for no overnight parking and parking for facility use would be adequate. And there, I mean, there is leeway there because it's not the whole entire parking lot. There is a dirt parking lot that we're not going to post signage in. It's mostly for the pavement parking lot that serves for the community that's directly going to the Center for All Seasons. I had something else, but those are the two biggest things. Is no overnight
Throw it on
parking
out there.
facility.
You got the floor, so if you got something else, now's your
No,
chance.
it fleeted, it ran out of my head. My apologies, so.
You're too young for that.
Now, did we check with DOT about,
They want to see the sign. There's an email or something.
Yeah,
They want to see the signs to prove them before we put them up.
but they don't have.
They don't have a problem. They just don't want to make sure they approve the signs.
And those other
Where's
signs, like
that?
flip signs would be for events like when we're doing voting. Or when we have a major event down there, and we do have to put those out, they are, I mean, they're in the trunk of my car.
I don't need to see the sign unless it's a permanent sign, correct?
It is a permanent sign. If they approve
Well, it's a folding sign that they would drop if there was an event, and have the verbiage on that they wanted. And then when the event was over, they just flip it up rather than having to carry the sign back and forth out of storage.
Sounds like a lot of money to me.
So are you proposing those for both the Center for All Season and the Village Green, West Road? I was gonna say, because there's a lot of pulling signs in and out for events. I think that makes sense.
It changes the job, it takes 25 minutes to an hour, take them up, put them down. To a job that would take 12 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just a totally different. And you can have anyone do it, it doesn't have to be the Center for All Seasons, it could be a renter, it could be whoever we have for an event, say it was Christine Olsen doing the Village Concert Series. It would just make it all more fluid. The fire department, I mean, voting, it wouldn't have heavily rely on one or two people to do it.
So did you get a cost on them?
We have a cost in the polling sign.
It's in your packet on the last page.
I mean,
Oh,
depending on what you write, it's averages right around 400.
98 to 100.
Oh.
and then that doesn't include shipping and that, I'm sure.
Do you have money in your budget that will cover them?
The reserve currently has $99,542.61.
How much did you
I
say?
would think that would.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Because it does say you have to get to $500 to get free shipping. So,
Well, by the time you get the states to put them in with, you'll be
Yeah,
up
it
over
would- so
500.
Each sign would run you about $160 or $170 maxed out with whatever verbiage we put on it.
Yeah.
Times four, 800 some odd. I don't know, not that good at my head right now, but. So it'd be under $1,000 for 4 signs that over the course of 4 years would save us $1,000 pretty quickly.
Right.
What happens when you herd cats all day?
So there'd be
I couldn't
two,
think either.
there'd be two at the Center for All Seasons.
Yep.
And
So-
then,
And then there'd be one usually, so like right as you pass that 25-mile-an-hour sign, cresting the hill past the seafood, Belgrade Seafood and Dairy.
Yeah.
And then it would be on the West Road, somewhere where that dirt access is for the golf course, or the whatever that road is.
uh-huh.
And you may have to have the breakaway signs because they're in the right of way.
Yeah, that's what these ones are too.
You're gonna do signage for the Village Green, you're gonna need something on southbound on 27.
right. And then, and where will those people park if we tell them they can't park?
This is a.
This is the event sign I'm talking about.
Right, but the event signs are parking, or just like a
Just a
news flash, there's an
Yeah,
event going on
So
ahead.
that event-
Just the
Just like
small
one-
will be because they'll
just like a
park
portable
wherever
ones
they
we
can
have.
park.
Right, But we don't do anything else on the Village Green.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
So
Coming
I'm
south,
trying
you
to
usually
picture how
can
it
see it.
goes.
You can see that. And you just come through the village, which you have to slow down. So I don't know that southbound on 27 you need them. It's really going
You're gonna put
northbound.
it to 25 mile on the northbound, you wouldn't need to do it. That's the case.
On the northbound section of going. So we have the slow event signs at the center for all seasons, but if we could, we do need them as it goes into the village on 27th. Or we could just use the movable signs for that. I mean, what we first discussed was making sure that we have them at the center for all seasons.
Because somebody died. That's why those
Yeah.
came about, was because somebody was leaving the center. They were parking too close to the entrance and somebody was hit. So that's why those are there. So I guess that's what I'm just trying to picture is going in, I think Hollowell, stood old Hollowell days. There was an additional signage. So I'm trying to just picture what the signs would be for that and what the need would be for that. Is it to calm traffic down as you're coming into the village because there's an event?
Right.
Okay, but not don't park too close to.
Right. But wouldn't it say slow down or slow event?
Yeah, it would say slow
Okay.
event, and that would just be on 27th, probably somewhere in between where the 45-mile-an-hour sign that they just put up and our sign, without obscuring either, or, and then and we definitely need one coming out of the village, because in my short tenure, I have almost seen 5 or 6 head-on collisions there because people will pass 3 cars coming out of town. And that's, I'm less worried about people coming into town than I am about someone coming out of town.
Coming out of town.
So
So they
that's
really
major.
replaced the portable ones that we have now.
Yes,
Yeah.
because those things fall over. I mean, this weekend they were up for an event that the Seven Lakes Lions had. They used them, and one of them got blown over probably. I mean, I don't know how long it was down, but it's not really serving a purpose. It's laying flat on its face.
And right now they're like,
They're trying, they're bifold, and we
Bifolds, yeah.
slide the sheet in. And they weigh about, 35 pounds for that. And then probably 10 pounds for the sign, or maybe 8 pounds for the sign. No, the sign's not holding.
Right.
I mean, I can bring one in, I have it in the car.
He puts it at the end of his driveway, he's mowing, event ahead. Yeah, I'm okay with it. I was just trying to kind of picture.
No, we can come up with an exact placement, and I can send that to the group of where we would want them, and then an exact sign.
Yeah, I'm visual. I want like a little map of this is what the area is and this is where we want to put them. I'm that girl.
The one thing at the center, I think there's so many feet from the driveway back, that sign has to be on north and south.
Oh, it was 200 feet.
Yeah, a day maybe right on that. It's a certain footage, I know that.
And then
Give
we'll,
it enough vision so that when someone coming out of the driveway can look down and the person coming up
See
in the
around.
car can see the person looking up.
right, and I guess my only other concern is that if there is a mounted sign, how many of us, when you're used to seeing a sign, disregard what that sign says?
Well,
But, so my thought is that if it's 200 feet to this side, if folks park opposite that sign, between that and the entrance to the Center for All Seasons, because we're still not visually blocking them from that parking.
I
Linda,
think the sign should say no parking, right?
I mean, it can't be.
What does it say now? I
Well,
forget.
it says
Slow event, that's what it's
Yeah,
almost
so
like.
that- yeah. And my understanding is that it'll be foldable. It's not going to be
No,
something that's
no.
going to be permanent. As soon as the event's over, it folds up, there's no sign.
right,
And
Well, there's a
it's no
sign.
different now that you're not putting up signs that are keeping people from parking down Route 27.
Right.
They're still parking down Route 27.
right. Right, it's just to bring attention to the fact that
And there's an event.
there's an
going on.
event coming up, and you should pay attention and slow down.
So do we
Right.
need a motion on this?
Well, they're asking to spend money from the reserve, right?
Right.
But you need to give them the option.
I move that we authorize up to $1,000 for 4 permanent signs for the Center for All Seasons
with break
and the
posts.
Village Green. To be taken out of the recreational reserve account.
Do we want to go up to 5 in case they decide they want one coming through the village before it comes to the green? come and sell it just in case.
We can, what,
Because that gives them the option to buy 5. If they don't need 4, that's great.
Or if one
so
of
that
them
we
gets
authorize
clipped
up
by
to
the,
1,500 and that
porta
gives
potty
you plenty
people.
of leeway. So I'll amend my motion.
I'll second that. All right, any more discussion on the signs? Seeing none. Ricky,
Permanent signs? Are they permanent signs?
so the post is permanent, but it's a breakaway post
It's a foldable
and it's a
sign.
foldable sign that's hinged in the middle. How does that stay open? There's a hook. I haven't seen one of them. so-
They use them, you see them out on the interstate a lot of times. Construction companies will use it. They'll use the square ones, half of them folds up when they're.
Oh, I always see the trash bag over there. with the
Yeah,
duct tape.
some of them-
That's what I
Some of them
see.
use the foldable ones too.
So let's go back a minute here. We're putting $1,500 to buy the signs. Who's gonna put them up? Somebody's gotta put the posts in the ground. We haven't figured anything for that. Am I correct?
Install.
So I'll get a quote on installation. I mean, that would probably, where is it? Where's that?
We'll see what the road commissioner should be doing.
I've got a post hole driver too. I will
Well,
do it.
but you're gonna have to
Alone
get,
that, yes.
you're gonna have to get DOT's blessing on this.
So DOT said, Ricky, on the front page of that,
I see what they said, but when
so
it
they
comes
still
down,
have to, yeah, so they still have
Yeah.
to sign off on it before we, pardon the
Right.
pun, but before we
Absolutely.
put up signs.
Right.
That's
But
what
they said, send the information once the board approves what has been submitted.
yep, okay, as long as we're all our ducks in order.
You just make the sign say, slow the down. All
So we
right,
need to vote.
so, seeing nothing else on that? All right, Ricky,
Again, I don't think you got enough money to do it. Because you
I
don't have
gotta,
to put the signs in. So I think you need to change that, but I think you got enough, I'll vote for it, whatever.
well, so I think at this point, are we just approving the signs and the posts? And then the
Find out what's the cost
installation
of
cost, we'll figure out what it will cost and maybe get that onto the next agenda, just the cost for the install.
Fine. Yes,
Okay, Barbara,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes,
Dan,
Yes.
all right, 5 yeses.
Which style sign do you want? Double
I like that.
triangle yellow or?
I'm big on,
Brightest of
I'm big on the brightest color we can do. Something that calls attention to the fact that, yep,
Yellow strip. And it's the color of that school crossing, so that should warrant some attention.
yep,
If you use orange, it's a little smaller construction sign.
right. And white, I don't know that anybody will notice that as much, but the yellow kind of pops. All right, so next on the Board of Parks and Recreation is the revision of the rental forms.
make a motion, we open it.
Oh, sorry. Take a motion, to open that item. Thanks. Moved by Rick, seconded by Dan. That is open for discussion. Well, actually. the whole thing is already. All right, you guys have the floor.
So the biggest reason we wanted to change the language that was on the rental form as far as a nonprofit designation is because we've had people that have nonprofits that are operating in Belgrade try to circumvent some of our policies and get a rental that would have cost them close to $1,000 for free. And it would put us in, I think if they press the issue, that they get through, because it's pretty ambiguous in our language. It says if you have a nonprofit operating in Belgrade, then you can get, I don't know why I printed it out, but I read it 3 times today. Our original agreement is a little bit ambiguous with the language on if you're a nonprofit in the town of Belgrade. I think operating in Belgrade leaves it open to interpretation versus based in Belgrade, which we would like to change it to, and then have something in there that will get this discretion of the recreation and the rec board or the rec committee.
So it just says recreation director.
Um, it would make it so that we wouldn't. We could be,
No.
we could say no and to rentals. If we didn't approve it.
So if you had a nonprofit in Augusta that was doing something out here, they're considered quote operating in Belgrade. And you're trying to get it, you're trying to tighten that up.
Yeah, I don't want people coming in, because we had a gentleman that said he was operating in the town of Belgrade, but the organization that he was with was worldwide. It was in Maine, it was, it was in 5 or 6 different places. But it wasn't through that organization that it was for personal use, but we were trying to use that organization to get a facility. So I want to make it so we don't have situations like that in the future where people try to use a nonprofit organization and just make it more solidified. So we have less of those people try to do this. Because I mean, it was a pain. I mean, between the last town manager, Barry Vogel, and myself, we probably had 25 to 30 email chain going back and forth. And it's been going on for 2.5 months. So not only is it something that has already consumed time, but I'm anticipating it will consume time again if another situation like this and it presses like this happens. You just got a situation where they just press it.
So will we keep some sort of a list? So that anyone, say maybe it's not you who's always accepting the rental agreements. We keep a list of who we've already said no to, so that it doesn't, where they're not like, oh, changing of the guards. Maybe we could get back in now. Just so there isn't ever any confusion moving forward on that either. Denny?
One comment I have is, anytime you say no, there has to be there should be an appeal process. Right? Otherwise, someone might perceive that Dan is unreasonably using his authority to block their use of the facility.
Sure.
Not saying that it is, there should always be an appeal process. And I think the appeal process is unstated really to the town manager and then to the board. The board is ultimately their appeal, the appeal for any of the courts.
Does that need to be stated on the contract?
Well, I think that, I personally think it is. I mean, we understand that process. Some people may not understand that process. Unless the end just says, well, you can appeal my decision, but this is my decision.
Well, because it does say any exemption is subject to the review and discretion of the recreation director, which does make it.
I'd like to see a little change to that, though. So what happens if he's on vacation or whatever? I think it ought to say rec director or designee at the select board. That way we can appoint somebody else if he's not around, or we could say our
Or
town manager.
designated what?
Designate.
A designee.
Yeah, so we could designate, if
Yeah,
Dan's
like
gone on
his-
vacation, we could say, tell the town manager, because people need to know right away whether or not they can book it or be exempt or whatever.
Uh-huh.
There always should be at least 2 people, one to cover. So,
Dan's assistant.
So should it be or should it be worded such that in his absence, there's.
yeah, so something like that, so that somehow there's a way to cover it if he's not around.
Does that need to be on here? Can that be in do we have a book on we talked about having a policy on refunds and all of that.
We're going to be working on massaging all of the policies into a document that makes more sense than
Mhm.
it is right now, because right now it's just a compilation of a whole bunch of policies that have been accumulated over the years, and that sort of thing would get put into that policy that describes the rental process, the appeal process,
Right.
who can say what. I mean, he's wicked busy right now, and I'm wicked busy right now, so this is a fall project.
Yeah.
We wanted to move this part forward, and we're gonna go through and redo all of our forms. But this one, we wanted to get out of the way, to start, but also because we've already had an issue with it. And I've already had another party contact me with a similar situation. So it's one of those things that I think I'm just gonna see it, and I'd rather be able to either say no, or either say, you know, we need to go to appeal to see if it's okay. It's just something that we wanted to edit and fit in now, because we have rentals, we have people book rentals every single week. You know, that center is gonna be used in the next month, probably every weekend, almost every day. So, and it's just happening more. I mean, since we're super busy, and I would like to have it reserved too for the parties in the town of Belgrade that are nonprofits operating, which they use it a lot, and it's great for our town, versus someone using, you know, going through the language and saying that their party does operate in Belgrade, and then they would get the facility for free, the way it's stated now. If they did the paperwork right, they could get in for free, and we wouldn't be able to turn them away. And that's like, I'm okay with that for the Friends of Belgrade Library, and well, not specifically, but you know, it's a good example. And I just want to make sure that we're giving them giving them the best opportunity, but also giving the town a way to make money off of people that are trying to take advantage of us.
We have a statewide nonprofit that serves a few people in Belgrade, claim to be able to use it for
Right.
free because of that. And if it's up to the discretion of the rec director, he can parse that out and figure out whether or not it's legit.
Yeah.
It seems to me like this is something you need right now, and then you'll come back with a comprehensive plan fourth quarter.
And what's the, if applicable, renters must provide proof of liability insurance?
Yeah.
Under what circumstances?
That depends on if it's, so when there's different parties, so with a birthday party, you know, that's like assumed that they're just renting the space and having kids in there. But say it's a birthday party that has a vendor come in, as, you know, they have a balloon or
Bounce house.
bounce houses, or if they had, you know, we have a wedding coming up where they're having a caterer come in, all those people need to provide liability insurance, versus if it was, you know, we're going down there as we're having Anthony's going away thing, you know, we don't need to provide liability because we're not selling anything, we haven't been paid to be there. That's what that.
Like the fire department, we do the whole stuff up when I used to be with Michael is now. We always bought an event policy to cover
Yeah.
us. We're someone serving food, somebody got sick or whatever, you know, the town doesn't want to end up being liable for that.
In your event policy, 100 and a quarter.
Yeah, it is not a whole lot of money.
No, they're inexpensive.
So like I said, the only thing I can see is, like I said, I just want to make sure that if the rec director is not around, we have another designate or can designate somebody as.
And if you have that in your policy manual.
Yep.
That would,
We did have to make that change.
And
So,
I think to go back to the earlier statement about the rental exemption from rental fees subject to review and discretion of the rec director, then goes on to say exemptions will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So that kind of indicates that there's,
yeah.
could be more of a process. Sorry.
I mean, that was just that's kind of how we went by it, just so that we did have a redundancy in there of, you know, if someone did, you know, put up a stink, then it would get put through the, kind of get filtered through. Whether it's the board of select people or if it's the recreation board, that there's some second person that review conflicting or an issue.
I move we allow the rec department to make the changes they're requesting for the summer with the, yes.
So I want to bring to your attention that proposing increasing fees for use of equipment on it. So everything used to be $10, setting up the stage, $10 fee, use of projector, $10 fee, use of screen, $10 fee.
Oh,
And Things have been broken. In fact, right now, we don't have a screen. that's-
I was just gonna say, do we have a screen and a projector that still
We
work?
don't have a projector, that's broken. The screen is functioning.
Oh, because I was told that the screen,
Well, the screen, well, I guess like, the screen can function.
That sounds like it needs elastics.
It can.
If you have enough duct tape around.
Put sheet over it, it works.
so, because I'm also like, if we don't have working things here, then maybe we need to take that off the form.
I've just been telling people that we can't, we don't have them currently. So when they fill out a form and they ask, can we get this? Most people just need chairs and tables. And anybody that needs anything else, I say unfortunately right now that's broken. But
If available.
and we can add it for available too. Because we do have to exclude things from our rentals, and like, just like when people want to play pickleball, they can't play because we've got 65 kids there. You know, we could be using the projector, or another town party could be using the projector, or the screen. Yeah, I do think that the raising the rates on those things, because we're pretty much giving it away, and then it doesn't. I want to make sure that we're making money. People bring their own stuff there if they want to. They bring their own speakers, but the people that rent it, we should be trying to profit, you know, make some profit off of it.
And setting up the stage is a backbreaking tedious process. $10 does not cover the risk of injury when setting it up, so.
Do you think you're gonna get pushback on the increase in fees on the North Belgrade Community Center?
And not on the other, not on the the Belgrade Community Center is the Center for All Seasons.
We're not increasing rental fees, though.
Yeah,
Yes, you are.
for North Belgrade.
You went from 15 to 25 and from 30 to 50.
I don't think we're gonna go on pushback on that. To be honest with you, everybody that's come to me has told me it was an excellent deal. Everyone says it's hands down. They think it's a steal. to be
Do they
able to
feel
rent
like
it,
it's a
so-
better deal because it's $15 an hour? And if they have the opportunity instead to spend $25 an hour for the social room at the Center for All Seasons, maybe then they won't be renting North Belgrade?
I think there's different demographics for the rentals. A lot of the people, and the other thing is a lot of times people that call to rent the Center for All Seasons often it'll be booked. So then they'll rent out the North Belgrade Community Center versus not wanting to pay more for the North Belgrade Community Center. And using the regular. I mean, I've had more people rent North Belgrade because they couldn't get the Center for All Seasons than I've had people call me just to rent North Belgrade Community Center.
Okay, so that is a shift then that's already happened because that used to be rented a lot, because I think originally it was like $10 an hour. So there would be birthday parties and baby showers and all that going on up there.
I think you can justify that with the cost of everything going up. I mean.
Yeah.
Tell you right now, even increasing that water too.
That's right. So I think you're fine.
So I go back to, I move that we allow Parks and Recreation to amend their forms as presented for the, and in the fall, with the understanding that you'll update with policy changes in the fall.
And you're talking both forms, because the second form we didn't review.
I'm talking both forms.
Okay, so we're okay with nonprofit organizations not paying anything if they have alcohol served there?
I mean, I don't think
What's that?
those events are usually, I haven't had a nonprofit, like, I haven't encountered that yet. And that's the biggest, that's the number one, well, the number one reason that we wanted to do this is because that party wanted to have alcohol served. So we wanted to make sure it was, I mean, that was always in our policy that Belgrade nonprofits could use the facility with alcohol free of use. That's always been there. But we just wanted to,
Didn't used to be, but maybe Maybe
In the
is there for
policies
that?
that I read, it said if you're if you're a nonprofit operating Belgrade, you can get the facilities for free, and that's where we started this whole loop. Is this person tried to rent the Center for All Seasons for 6 hours for free, and we quoted them at like over $1,000, and they came back and said, whoa, nonprofit, and then that's where this all started, because they wanted to use the facility. So I think we just wanted to tighten that part up so that we can offer it to groups. We do want groups in Belgrade to be able to have alcohol, so if they have to go through a bunch of hoops to do it anyways,
Right,
it's not like it's free. I mean, it's still gonna cost them a couple $100 on, with, if they get catering service, you're talking hundreds of dollars. So we're just really trying to offer the facility still to our nonprofits for free, but not nonprofits that aren't necessarily Belgrade nonprofits. That's really the thick of it.
all right, so your
I
motion
made
was
the
to
motion.
approve both. Seconded by Barbara. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Ricky?
Yes, I will be the first one to know if there's something wrong, I can tell you.
All right, Dan,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. Change up those signs. And then we'll see you again in a couple of months. All right, next we have amendments to the Belgrade's Commercial Development Review Ordinance. I'll take a motion to open that item.
So moved.
Moved by Carol, seconded by Barbara. That is open for a whole bunch of discussion.
You guys did a good job.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. Have you had a chance to at least see the commercial development ordinance as revised? I know it's probably Peter Rush. Have you had a chance to see it, or at least it's been presented to you?
This one from March and then,
Right, and it's had some revisions, as you know. Our main goal was to construct some language that would be focused on applications for commercial solar facilities. I did want to share a few thoughts with you. I had a letter I wanted to send off to you, but I didn't get out in time, so I just referenced it for a second. Just so you have some understanding of how we got to where we are now. And I don't want to lose thanking a number of people that worked very, very hard. So in this, just wanted to make sure you that we worked for over a year. with this team. Took a lot of effort, a lot of coordination, a lot of negotiations that took place. Drove some of us a little nuts, but we came back anyway. It's all good. And I mentioned negotiations and compromise. That was something that was very important. This is an emotionally charged issue. We had definitely had issues, emotions on either side, viewpoints on either side. So we had to really come together as a group, planning board members, and work this out. We did a very good job of that. I also want to make sure we thank former town manager Anthony Wilson, who helped us stay on track while managing the revisions of a very large document. Want to make sure to mention to you folks that we reached this point after having done a really comprehensive look or analysis of other towns' ordinances in Maine. And that was an important feature because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel at all. And we didn't want to start from scratch. We wanted to get going, knowing we had a timeline to work for. So that was very important. Chiefly, the planning board heard from a member of the Reedfield Planning Board who came and gave a presentation to us. We also saw the expertise of Katie Cog. They helped us out and gave us a skeleton document that we started from, which was very helpful. Planning board members heard from people in town. Dan attended. Thank you, Dan, for showing up. I really appreciate your insight there. Heard from an expert in landscape architecture. We sort out a few things. Steve, you showed up on a number of occasions on a number of long nights. Thank you for your input. I really appreciate that. And just wanted you to know we have one public information meeting so far. We've had some comments from that, and have made revisions, and that's now that. Which is so that's the background, that's how we got here. Just for your convenience, a couple of key takeaways are these. What this commercial solar facility language includes are some things like this: siting prohibitions, decommissioning plan, the inclusion of a visual impact analysis as part of the submission requirements, vegetative screening requirements, and setback requirements, and consistent measures to address protection of lake water quality and significant natural resources. So I know I've glossed over some of the details. My goal is not to sort of relive that whole sausage making, but we got to this point, and we want to present this to you so we can move forward, knowing we have a timeline to get the voters. Does that help?
Yes. Steve.
Yeah, I'm Steve Brooksbaum, resident in Belgrade. I participated in a few of the planning board meetings regarding solar language, and I have some comments regarding the proposed ordinance. A little background, about 40 years, various capacities in economist at the Office of Energy Resources back in the 1980s. I became a consultant. I worked for a variety of different organizations, environmental groups, industrial groups, Maine Public Utilities Commission. I eventually became a founder of a company called EES, which specialized in energy conservation, project development with commercial and industrial customers, Ice Fiber, Otis Specialty Papers, Dragon Cement, were some of my clients, my company. Became experts in the installation of variable speed drives in industrial settings, and developed a very successful business. More recently, I founded a company called Solar Fields here in Belgrade. Aim of developing a solar energy facility on Route 135, a piece of property that we purchased. Company submitted an application for town permit in June of 2020, and or I should say it was submitted in May of 2020. Permit was approved. And we went on our way trying to work our way through the interconnection agreement with Central Maine Power Company and a power sales agreement with Central Maine Power Company. After a year, I came back to the planning board, told them that we are still waiting. There are a tremendous number of project proposals around the state, and our turn for negotiating an interconnection agreement with CMP had not come up yet. We were given a one-year extension under the existing ordinance, which we were very happy about. But at the end of that year, which was June of 2022, we still don't have an interconnection agreement, still waiting, although we have now been offered an interconnection agreement and have started negotiating with CMP about that. What I come to you tonight to actually recommend to the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, that you slow the process down for approving the proposed ordinance for the town vote. If the moratorium has to be extended because of this decision, so be it. A survey of other town solar requirements should be undertaken as a preliminary assessment of how the proposed ordinance stacks up against ordinances in other towns. Taken as a whole, it appears to me that the proposed ordinance would be one of the most restrictive in the state. I'm not sure that's where Belgrade wants to be. The planning board has layered in setbacks, buffer strip planting requirements, visual impact studies, view shed analysis, and other requirements, one on top of the other. Many of these individual requirements are equal to or greater than the maximum values found in other towns. Altogether, the combination of requirements creates a package that I believe is profoundly anti-solar. I provided I put together a list of some of the changes to the plan that I would recommend. I'm just going to go through them really quickly so that you get some idea of what I'm talking about. Regarding the setbacks from the property line, from Route 135, and from the abutting residence that is to the north of the property. I recommend that we use in this town this DEP statewide stormwater planning setbacks for wetlands and rivers and streams, rather than the larger setbacks in the proposed ordinance. I recommend that we leave the setback from the property line at 25 feet rather than increasing it to 125 feet. And those are in areas where there are no residences. Recommend reducing the setback for abutting residences to 250 feet. Already a substantial setback. On planted buffers, I think we should base the requirements for the plantings along the road and abutting properties on the findings of the visual impact assessment that's required by the ordinance. The plantings required in the proposed ordinance are excessive. I think we should eliminate planting requirements along property lines other than places along roads and abutting residences where the plantings are required. There's a term in the ordinance that says 80% obscuration of any view is required. It's found in sections 5C7, 5C7D. 80% of what? This term is undefined. I think it needs to be defined. It's one of the key purposes of the visual impact assessment. I think the open space requirement, 15% of the property has to be reserved for open space, should be eliminated. I don't see any reason for it. Regarding farmland, there's a definition of farmland found in the definition section of the ordinance. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with the farmland language that's included further on in the ordinance. I think that needs to be fixed. Regarding permit application requirements, I think the ordinance should require farmland soil tests only if the U.S. Department of Agriculture maps show the possibility of prime farmland on the site. And the site contains cleared farmland, which has been used for agricultural purposes during the past 5 years. I think the required view shed analysis should only be required where a preliminary review finds the possibility of long-range views. Property that we want to develop doesn't have views from a mountaintop, from a lake. It's not visible except from the road that passes by Route 135. Visual impact assessment should focus on buffer strip planting requirements in cases where there are no long-range views. Regarding forest land cutting, the immediate carbon dioxide and methane emissions benefits of reducing combustion of fossil fuels through the use of solar energy far outweigh the beneficial effect of forests on the amount of gases in the atmosphere, on the amount of these gases in the atmosphere. It's not even close. In other words, the savings, the carbon dioxide and methane emissions produced by the solar facility greatly outweigh the beneficial effects of trees and forests in reducing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I believe we should increase the maximum amount of forest land cutting from 10 acres in the proposed ordinance to 25 acres. Interconnection agreement. Section 5B5 contains an obscure reference to an agreement. It's not identified and it's not explained. And so I think that should be either identified or eliminated. Inspections. Section 5C 16B requires monthly physical inspections of all modules. The solar farm will be equipped with a sophisticated monitoring system. The need for physical inspections should be based on the project engineer's ongoing review of the information produced by this monitoring system, not just a monthly, walk around to look at every module. Finally, on the decommissioning plan, the state has recently passed a decommissioning or a law for solar facilities. I believe that the Belgrade ordinance should reference that law and say that any project given a permit will have to meet the requirements of the state law and not some bunch of different requirements that are taken from different places and don't really, add anything in the end. Once developed, solar farms are very likely to continue generating electricity for many decades, perhaps updating the modules when cost effective. The proposed ordinance requires a lot of very long-range, judgments as to what the costs will be, what the circumstances will be for decommissioning, et cetera. There's already a state law that addresses this. It puts the Department of Environmental Protection in charge of the decommissioning. I believe that's where it should stay, and that would greatly simplify our ordinance. I appreciate all the work that's gone into the development of the ordinance. I feel like reasonable people can disagree about these issues. I don't see the rush to put this before the voters when I think further review would lead to a better ordinance. I know that's kind of.
I'm over here, I'm like,
I know
well,
that's kind of a big idea compared to, I don't mean to disparage science, but, we're talking a global issue here. Global warming is a major problem. We are beginning to see the effects of right here in Belgrade. So I'd be happy to provide this list to planning board and select board.
Yeah.
Helpful.
Because I did some hand scratching, but I don't think I kept up. with some
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I'm sorry if I rushed through it a little bit.
No, that's okay. I just was like, oh, that's a good point. Oh, wait, where was he at with that one? So when you picked up some stuff in there that in my reading of it and reading the revisions as they were kind of coming through, that I hadn't picked on, like, the farmland definition being,
Yeah.
a little bit different. And I think it's one of those things that when you're in the thick of it, you know what you intend it to say. So, and I know the decommissioning has been a big question, and now that there is the state of Maine law about decommissioning, is there a reason why we want ours to be more restrictive? Or, because I know a lot of the times with the ordinances, as we're updating them, what we want is we want to refer to whatever the current state of Maine law is, because then it takes it off everyone's plates, you guys, 9 times out of 10, from having to constantly update to be compliant with those regulations.
So when we were going through this process, I was not aware yet, and I'm glad Steve you brought this up, that the decommissioning law was now in place. So perhaps, as was mentioned, we've tried to be consistent by referencing state law many times throughout a number of ordinances. But it might be worth consideration, that's for sure. I can't speak for the other planning board members, but wow.
Okay, and Bruce first and then,
First goes, so state law, I'm in plumbing and heating. So any laws or codes or anything like that the state develops is a minimum. They expect the municipalities to make it more stricter. That's just a minimum requirement. It's like that in any field. The state law is just minimum. It's up to the towns to either accept the minimum requirements or make the requirements more stricter.
George?
Actually, just to correct Peter a little bit, we did have available to us the definition of decommissioning from state statute and reviewed it fairly carefully and found it wanting, particularly since it does not require the removal of all equipment underground. And we wanted the site to be able to be reused for other purposes at the end of its lifespan. And so that was a conscious decision by that all the planning board members agreed to. So for example, it could be turned back into agriculture or whatever.
And,
Steve has a question.
sorry, Steve.
Yeah, it's been a while since I looked at the law. I think that the law does require the equipment to be removed. It allows for some cases where the screw foundations, some of the racking are in places where they won't pull out, that if they're below 3 feet below or 4, I can't remember, 4 feet below the surface, they can remain. But other than that, it requires the equipment to be removed.
Steve, what does, because this is, it's gonna need a lot of study on my part. What does this ordinance do to the project you were looking to do?
It eliminates it by having reduced the amount of available acreage. It's a 21 acre field. And approximately 14 acres of that field are used up in buffer strips, setbacks, stream, wetland setbacks. And the ordinance increases the DEP's setbacks along streams. It requires a 125-foot setback around the entire perimeter of the property. We have like, I don't know, remember now, is it 6,000 feet of property line?
Okay.
If you multiply 6,000 times 125, you can see that adds up to a lot of acreage. So 14 acres was taken up by this.
So just to give me a sense, you have a 21 acre lot, and I know you've got dimensions and so on. How much of that do you need to make your project viable? I mean, can you do it at, I don't know, this takes it to 7. Can you do it at 12? Can you do it at 7? I mean,
Yeah,
how restrictive is it?
we,
I
sorry,
mean, where would it have to go back to make your project work?
we would need about 13 acres of usable land.
So it would take off half of your buffering and
Yeah,
setback.
right.
I'm just curious to get a sense of what that does.
Yeah, and we have agreed to a 250-foot setback from the road, which is way more than any other town requires, as far as I know. We've agreed to a 250-foot setback from the abutters residence. Beyond that, I think that I don't see why this perimeter buffer strip of 125 feet is there. I don't see why the 15% open space requirement is there. And I think the other buffers that the DEP buffer should be used. That's part of the statewide stormwater planning management effort. Why does Belgrade need to increase those buffer strips? I don't know that's been done anywhere else, but I could be wrong about that.
Okay, George, sorry.
Yeah, just to be clear, there are different issues that we were trying to address, all in the same setbacks and particularly the ones for natural resources. There are ones for stormwater, but those will be determined on a site-specific basis based on the stormwater management plan that will be required, as it would for any other commercial development in the town of Belgrade.
Right.
I think some of the buffers and setback that Steve's referring to are actually ones that come from guidelines from Inland Fish and Wildlife for solar facilities to protect water quality in streams, to protect water temperature in streams, to also provide for wildlife travel corridors along streams, intermittent and perennial. So you got to be clear about what natural resource you're trying to protect and how you protect it. And the key is it a stream by definite state definition? It has to have a mineral. It has to carry water often enough to have a mineral base. A vegetated drainage ditch does not qualify as a stream under state definition. So you got to take all those things into account. It's not quite that one size fits all.
Yeah,
Just some stuff that I've heard through this process. The biggest thing I've heard from people is the visual impact. This is Belgrade, this is a tourist town. They don't want to be able to see the solar farms. They're looking at what's coming through Augusta, they're looking at what's coming through Farmington. And I've heard from some people that if we don't find a way to keep the visual impact as strict as possible, that they're going to start with petitions on top of this ordinance to make it even stricter. And this is more of a compromise to try to really try to keep the view as a tourist town, you know, versus some of these other places that are more in putting the solar farms everywhere.
But if there's a site that isn't visible from the lake, from the golf course.
right.
And that's why they asked for the view shed analysis.
Right.
That makes, and then
And so with the view shed analysis, is there some discretion in the size of the buffer strip, or no, it still has to be the same amount of buffer strip and planting?
Yes, it would be the same.
For anybody, no matter where it is, no matter what the view shed.
The way it's written, that is right.
And as Steve mentioned, there's a performance standard of demonstrating that there's an 80%, you're obscuring the solar facility from, you know, the residents or whatever the
roadway.
Yeah, the roadway by 80%. And that was based on advice we received from Dewan Associates, which is a landscape architecture firm in Yarmouth that met with us, that we not try to accomplish 100% obscurity, because that's just impossible to meet, both in the visual impact analysis that you leave some room for being able to see a small portion of a solar facility, say from Jack Sutton's house, a hilltop, or from the hilltop at the golf course, or from one of the lakes, because it's almost virtually impossible to completely screen that out. Likewise from a residence next door. So the way the ordinance is crafted is the visual buffers are minimal, and if the visual impact analysis indicates it's still not adequate, we could actually require additional screening.
I'm over here thinking about when we were putting in the sand and salt shed, and we were told that we had to create a visual barrier buffer from the road. Can you all still see the sand and salt shed? Because I can. So, you know, it didn't accomplish what it was designed to accomplish. You can still see it. Nothing grew up. So we're requiring for this visual buffer that plantings be of a certain age and height?
The other thing that you guys as a board and, have to also think about is your abutting landowners to these commercial solar. Now, if I was abutting landowner, I would, if I could see that solar farm from my house or from my property, say, for instance, I own 100 acres and I bought 20 acres of a solar farm. And I can see that property, see that solar farm when I'm walking on my property. I'm gonna come to you guys and say, I want a reduction of my land value for my property taxes. I bought this land knowing that this is free land. I pay my taxes. I want to be able to view my land and view around and not obstruct the animals going back and forth across the land, for one. I 100% agree with the setback from the waterways. I mean, you have so many animals that run the waterways. You have beaver, you have muskrat, all kinds of wild animals that run the waterways. So as you guys as a board, this is something you guys really got to think about because, for instance, one of the other solar farms that, it's been proposed that they want to try to get a permit for, you're going to have people, what I've seen read on the studies is, it's going to be viewable from like some of the camps. Well, I can tell you, some of them camp owners are going to come to you and say, whoa, 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 we don't want to pay this tax. We're coming to Maine, we're coming to Belgrade, Maine to enjoy our camp, and we're paying a premium price for taxes. We don't want to look at that. That's what you all gotta keep in mind of all this.
So, well, and I guess, with that first, I think, probably the first thing is, I don't see that Steve's proposal was saying, I don't agree that there should be a buffer from the abutting neighbor. I mean, when the house next door to me went up for sale, I get to see a junky Subaru sitting next to my house now and some old crap they decided they didn't want to keep at their other property. Literally just dumped in my clearing, but it's not my clearing, it's theirs. So if they want to put crap on it, they can put crap on it and I get stuck seeing it. Try not to look when I go down my driveway. But there's nothing I can do about it because I don't own the property. I could have bought the property, but I didn't purchase the property. And I don't have any rights to tell them what they can do on their property as far as that goes. I see the setbacks from the stream. I think that that's important. And I see being a good neighbor, 250-foot buffer is a pretty good chunk from someone who can see you. So are we requiring this additional 250 where there's no one abutting it in case anybody ever were to be in a butter? So like we're looking down the road and in case the property, I'm just going to use yours as an example, goes up for sale. Then are we protecting the future owner from that, from seeing this? Or are we saying, are we creating a hindrance that is actually going to prohibit folks from being able to do one of these projects? Are we making it so restrictive that no one can do it?
Right.
Or are we being reasonable about it? Steve?
I just like to make the point that in this discussion of view, it appears to me that the 80% obscuration calculation is in the ordinance. It needs to be defined. But it appears to me that if a solar module can be viewed from 1,500 feet away, that is as important in that calculation of the 80% value as a solar module that is 10 feet away. That makes no sense. Okay, if something is 1,500 feet away, it stands 9 feet tall, it's not going to appear very big from 1,500 feet away. You're going to have to look at it and say, oh, yeah, that's a solar module. So that part of the ordinance definitely needs work. I don't understand the 80% figure. 80% of what? It's really.
Peter or George, can you respond to what the 80% is supposed to be?
I can tell you what we were told by Dewan Associates. I mean, it's sort of like looking at, it's sort of like when you screen soil. Or say you trying to put soil through a screen. Depending on the size of the holes is how much of the fines and the size of material that goes through the screen. So a forest or a vegetative buffer is the same way. How much of what you can see from his home of the solar modules and the facility is visible through that buffer? Is it more than 20%? That's really the question.
So we're not.
And the definition that Steve's looking for is in the protocols that in the computerized photo simulation that they use in doing a visual impact analysis. I mean, it takes pictures from all these different aspects from all the receptors, they can adjust that for different, amount of obscurities. So that one of the problems we ran into in regard to this and just visual impact assessments in general is there's no national standard by which these are done. There's no ASTM standard for this. And so we had to rely on the information we got from Dewan Associates, who referred us to a DEP regulation that under the Natural Resources Protection Act that spells out a very general methodology by which visual impact assessments need to be done. And we incorporated that by reference. So we are very dependent on the professionalism of the people conducting. We can't say you have to do it in accordance with, let's say we're talking fire protection, NFPA code, whatever, or ASTM standard thus and so. So you're a little bit dependent on the people conducting this rather than a standardized methodology.
So George, when you talk about, as I'm driving into Augusta and you have the solar field there and you have a buffer, but they're low, so they really don't hide anything. Is that this obscuration, blah, blah, formula you're working on? Because they're not, you can see so much of it.
That would be 0%.
Yeah.
That's tokenism
Right.
is what that is.
But I mean, that's sort of what you're talking about. You want it so
yeah.
that whatever is there in the buffer is not a low buffer, it's enough of a buffer, so you're not going to see what's behind.
Yeah,
Is
so
that
the
what you're
planning
saying?
standards that we proposed is very similar to what exists currently for other commercial development in town under the ordinance, where you have a mixture of trees and shrubs to fill in the gaps. And so they're offset by one another. I mean, it's standard protocol at DEP under the site location development law to use a similar kind of planting program, albeit it might be of different depths, not for just for solar, for large developments in
Large
general.
Like a sandy
shopping
section.
centers or whatever.
If you think of it in the lakes version, dealing with Seven Lakes Alliance,
Mhm.
they use obscuration discs for clarity of water.
Oh,
You
yeah.
drop it down
Secchi
in the
does.
water.
Yeah,
The more
Many
algae,
times.
whatever, the more
Yeah.
obscure that becomes.
Mhm.
And it's basically how much.
Yeah, that's basically,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the same idea,
But it's
but you're using
80%,
trees.
80% means that you don't want to see 80% of the,
You don't want to see more than 20%.
you don't want to
Of
see
the
more than
equipment.
20% of the.
Yeah.
Okay, Danny?
Just as I was listening, I think a better way, and maybe I'm wrong, George, but a better way to look at the
Yeah.
Because now we're feeling
to look at the
obtuse.
wall, put your hands up like this and see how much you can see.
Yeah. that's
Because
good
looking
analogy.
through your hands like that, it's obscuring a portion of that wall.
Right,
And you may see some of it, may not. See, in all places, you won't see all of it. So
Right.
whatever that number is, like right there would be 50%.
So that's what I guess I want to be sure that for the definition, are we talking about standing height? This is what you're seeing. Are we saying, if this is my property here and I put a solar farm and my neighbor has a house on a hill, a really high hill over here, do I have to somehow come up with a way that my neighbor over here cannot see that this is a solar farm? Or are we talking obscuration from ground level?
From 0 to 10 feet from ground level.
Yeah,
0
we
to 10
wrestled with
feet.
that actually
Okay.
a lot. And if I could just go on to say, this is new ground for us. We've never done this before in our town
Yeah.
for this ordinance, for this stuff. So we had to grapple with a lot of instances, like what if this, what about that? And George hit the nail on the head about our reliance on the view impact analysis that we've done. That, in my mind, we were going to this, really would help help convey a message to the planning board when reviewing an application in the future, what would be seen from different elevations.
Okay. Dan, did you have your hand up? No, okay, sorry. Steve?
I just wanted to respond to Carol's questions. That solar farm on the way into Augusta extends far back.
Yeah,
You
no,
can't see it.
right.
So if you want to obscure 80% of the modules, they might be 80% obscured. Unfortunately, they continued right up to the road. I'm saying that ours would be 250 feet back. That's quite a ways back.
Mhm.
Now, if you talk about visuals, I could see how if you could take a snapshot of what your eyes can see from the road, and you have modules 1,500 feet, 1,000 feet away, they only take up a tiny amount of what your eye can take in, okay? I don't know how that's incorporated into the 80%. I don't believe it really is. And that's one of the problems with it.
Isn't that taken care of by the models that you run? I mean, you take the pictures and,
With the visual impact analysis.
yeah, I mean, the concern, this is a valid concern. But doesn't the models that your consultant works to perform, the analysis they work to perform, all of that is embedded in the model itself in terms of how to come up with that 80% or whatever.
That's my understanding. But we're not experts in this,
No,
okay? We had to learn all this over the past 9 months, and so, because, the only support we had really, in terms of starting position was the KV cog model ordinance, Maine Audubon's model ordinance, the 9 municipal ordinances that we looked at. There are not a lot of towns in the state of Maine that have solar ordinances. We looked particularly at ones that had lake tourism economies. So that we could see if we could find something where the values that we were trying to protect would be somewhat similar. The only 2 we could find were Naples and Greenville. Rangeley doesn't have one, all those other lake communities don't have one. And Steve is correct. This will, compared to those 9 communities, be in some arguably more stringent in terms of protecting the visual, or minimizing the visual impact than those others. With Reedfield, you could argue that Reedfield's the most stringent in the state, I mean, Steve's correct, and one of the considerations on our part, and I have to admit, I was slow to coming to this. Others on the planning board had to convince me that these facilities will be the largest commercial endeavors that we will see in Belgrade. and the scale is different. And as much as I support renewable energy, it needs to be taken into account that they're not environmentally benign. You know, they have surface water impacts, they have phosphorus runoff, will have phosphorus runoff, there is potential for soil erosion. There is the potential for visual impacts. I mean, some of these facilities, the one that's being proposed right now in Benton, Unity and Albion, 900 acres. You know, so we got to be prepared both for the very large facilities as well as the more modest sized ones like Steve's, which I think is the better fit for Belgrade. It's, you know, but we did survey other municipalities. That just weren't a lot of municipalities that provide information.
And I think, was it Reedfield that had zoning?
It was incorporated into its zoning. A number of these towns, Naples included, incorporated into their zoning.
So that changes the way, you know, actually compares different starting.
Right.
Peter, did all your committee members support this ordinance?
Ours?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, this is, as Peter mentioned, this was very much a negotiated document and involved a lot of compromise on all our parts. And consequently, you know, there's the planning board's in full consensus about it.
You know, that's a question I always ask.
No. What's the purpose of requiring the open space in the project? Because it seems like, you know, there's a big buffer around the perimeter and then it's fairly open. Why? Because with the solar panels, especially if they're tilting and changing direction with the sun, why do you need additional open space within that array?
Was that consistent with also, I think, going back to memory, which is not great, consistent with other things we've done in other ordinances, number one. I think number two, this is also part, it's not a solar ordinance by itself, right? It's in the commercial one. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, we wanted to make sure that was consistent there too.
But does it make sense to have, I mean, I understand consistency, but does it make sense to have it in a
So there are
open
two,
space?
in addition to what Peter mentioned, there were two aspects to this. One, this 15% open space set aside has been a requirement for subdivisions since the late 1980s in Belgrade. And that is a modicum of attempt, a minor attempt to, if you look at it, think about it, the two largest types of development we see in Belgrade now and will see in the future are subdivisions and maybe solar facilities or similar kinds of facilities. In terms of scale and scope, we were trying to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommendations that focus on trying to maintain as much open space as possible for as a way to protect water quality in terms of open space, just not generating as much phosphorus and stormwater as impervious structures associated with development. It doesn't come anywhere close, but it's a step in that direction. So that was the reason why it was put into the subdivision ordinance in the late 1980s. And we thought it was appropriate to be consistent with that in this ordinance as well.
I remember one comment, may have been me that made it at one of those meetings, was the solar panels themselves are almost like considered like mini roofs, just like you've seen in a subdivision. So from that perspective, you know, in terms of protecting the natural resources that George mentioned when we talked about runoff, it is like a roof. And I say that not disparagingly, because was, for the record, say, I'm in favor of, where possible, renewable energy use in Belgrade. But we have to come up with something that could be applicable in an ordinance that would also help protect Belgrade. So this is our attempt. It's not easy.
May I chime in?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I've been involved in this since January, and
Yeah,
few thi-
yeah,
I'm
just
sorry.
say who you are, just because of the Zoom meeting too.
Oh, I apologize. Richard Greenwald, Code Enforcement Officer. And so I'd like to say that Bruce is absolutely correct in the sense that we can make the ordinance more refined than the state ordinance. That is legal. And we have done that to a point. However, I don't think that it's fair that we're compared to other towns, because Belgrade is not like every other town. I also work in Monmouth, which is another shoreland zoning town, and I live in Litchfield, which is another one. And they're not all created equal. And so the planning board at this point has taken into account a lot of things that people don't recognize. As far as, people don't want to see, and I'm thinking of Burton Woods Road, I think it was, the runoff. We had a problem with that. We wrestled with that for a while at the planning board. And then we went with setbacks. 25 feet's a little ridiculous, because at 25 feet, if you have a solar array that even rises 12 feet, at 25 feet, all you'd have to do is back up about 5 feet and you'd see it. So that's 25 feet's kind of ridiculous to me.
I don't think he said, Richard, I just
Yeah.
want to interrupt you for a second. He didn't say 25 feet. He said 125.
No, Steve, I believe, was comparing 25 feet to 125.
That's the existing setback in the commercial.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and we extended that to 125. And also to extend upon the 80% obscuration, I think that would be determined by the visual impact assessment, which is very important. As George mentioned, we had met with the folks from New Gloucester. I don't remember their names, but and they showed us this slide where they even went out into lakes with boats and were taking pictures. They had binoculars and they were trying to find certain points where they could provide a certain amount of obscurity from the solar panels. And so the visual impact assessment, I think, is very, very important. I think that it would determine a lot as to what goes on and how things, as far as buffers and things like that, are determined. So I think that it's extremely important. And Steve mentioned inspections monthly. Well, I have to be honest and tell you that I could not come out and do an inspection and be like, okay, yeah, this looks good. I don't know anything about these things. So if it was going to be relayed upon the DEP to do that, then I would expect that the DEP would provide the town of Belgrade, and more importantly, probably myself, with their monthly inspection of that facility, because I don't know anything about solar facilities really, aside from what I've learned through the previous months of making this ordinance. Also, as far as meeting state requirements, we're obviously going above and beyond, because as I said, Belgrade is a little bit different. We have a lot more lakes than most communities, and we're trying to protect these lakes. And I'm looking through my notes, pardon me. So and the thing is, if we're gonna be putting the DEP in charge of determining monthly inspections or something like that. I mean, I think it's a little overburdensome on the DEP to do that. And I will belay by saying, as far as discontinuing things or decommissioning, I really don't see why the DEP would be involved in a town ordinance that would be decommissioning when our ordinances, generally speaking, supersede the DEP's stuff. And I'll give you an example as the permit by rule. If a DEP gives a permit by rule, that's fine. However, they still have to go through our ordinances to be approved to do what they're doing. And so I think that the buffer zones, I think, are absolutely critical. We sat there and I know the planning board is just like, they've been overwhelmed with this, and they sat there and bickered over and over about, how we should make this fair for solar folks such as Steve, and fair for the residents that are out in a boat who don't want to look up and see a huge solar array as they're fishing or skiing or whatever they're doing out in the water. And so I think the buffer is huge. And I think Carol mentioned earlier about Augusta. Well, if you look at that, if you drive by that, they have about 20 shrubs that are brown. What kind of buffer is that? That's not a buffer. There's no buffer there. You can see the solar panels right in front of you as you drive by. And that's what I think we are trying to portray, is we don't want people to see that as it is, just, driving by or boating by or whatever the case may be. People don't want to see that. And so I think that perhaps we need to come to some sort of a level agreement here. Steve thinks that we're too restrictive. We think that we are within our boundaries as far as the ordinance that we are proposing goes. And there's some, we have to have some sort of agreement here. But I really want you to focus on, and I think it's very, very important, is that visual impact assessment, because we learned a lot from New Gloucester. I think that, and at least I did. And the visual impact assessment is going to be a huge, huge issue when it comes to this, because it's going to provide everything that we need as far as what we can see from the lakes, what we can see from the roads, what we can see from the mountains, etc. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And I also want to throw in that, once again, I'll reiterate, I don't know anything about solar, so I don't think that I'm the person that's going to be there monthly to go out and assess this. However, I could go out and say, well, the grass is growing too tall and the animals can't get underneath the fences or something like that. But other than that, I really don't think that I could do too much more than that. And we really need to pay attention to decommissioning, because I don't think that it should be a DEP thing, because it's a town thing, and I think it relies upon the town. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. So I didn't see anywhere in here where we were requiring DEP to do that. What I saw was that it was saying needs to be conducted by a qualified representative of the facility owner.
Yeah.
So not DEP.
Right.
So then that would involve.
And not the CEO.
Right, so would that then put that back on a facility operator, that they have to hire personnel and to conduct monthly inspections? And what does that all entail?
And how does that aspect of it compare with other towns or compare?
Right, so I think I'd want a little bit on that, and I also want to know who would be doing a visual impact assessment, because what might be acceptable to me may not be acceptable to you, or
I believe that's a higher.
Isn't that spelled out?
So the companies, if that's what they do, that's all they do.
I believe the applicant will be hiring firm to do visual impact assessment, landscape architectural firm. Correct.
Somebody that's qualified.
There are quite a few geographical information system consultants also that do it in the state of Maine. We were able to identify about 10 firms that did it.
So you suppose if we will have a new business opening in Belgrade? Just gonna be doing visual assessments.
Right.
So I think Steve raised a good question, which I would sort of expand on, which is, can we, in looking at the various questions that we have and concerns that Steve has raised, can we get everything answered to keep to the timeline of having this approved by the voters in November? I've lost, in my paperwork, I've lost where the timeline is, but I know that
It's
this.
right on the front page on your memo.
Oh, yeah, okay, got it. Okay. So, do we have enough time we have a month and a half. Select Board approves proposed amendments and ballot language on September 6th, but it has to go to the attorney before that.
Right.
So how much time is there? Because you've been working on this for a long time, and Steve is a professional in the field. And so it's all, somewhat new to the rest of us. So is there enough time to get some of these questions answered? Or do we need to consider
An extension of the
an extension
moratorium
of the
until
moratorium?
to get
I
us
mean, at
close
this
to the
point,
town meeting.
we have two known parties that are interested in developing solar facilities in Belgrade. Solar Fields, and I forget the name of the Burton Woods, Oakland Road folks. And it doesn't seem as if there are a lot of other people who are beating down the door, to do this. So, do we take more time, or can we get these questions answered to people's satisfaction within the next month?
Bruce?
My biggest fear, if you take enough time, is this November election, you're gonna have a big turnout. If you go for another 6 months, you may get a lighter turnout. I'm just saying for photo turnout to get you most residents voting on the ordinance. That would be my only concern.
So to answer the question about is there enough time to get those other things worked out and still stick to the timeline that we're talking about, the realistic answer is probably not enough time. So if you want to get those things answered, I think we would then forfeit the time.
I think what would be helpful for me is if Steve could put together that list, because I know I didn't get everything
Yeah, I
down.
have it. I'll send it.
And I'm sure you can reference, this goes to 14A and this is, so that, I can at least do some homework to say, ooh, does this make sense? Not, to see where questions are.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously not experts in this.
Yeah.
I know.
So, we've relied a lot on.
That would be helpful.
on the
Nobody
planning board.
is. I've never developed a solar farm before.
So Steve, where's the status of your application now?
Well, the existing commercial development review ordinance provides for a 12-month window. If you haven't started construction within that 12 months, you can ask for an extension and get another 12 months.
Okay,
Those two 12-month periods expire in June. And the ordinance is very explicit, saying that if the project has not started construction within the second 12-month period, that the permit will be null and void at the end of that second 12-month period. So my permit expired in June.
so at this point, you have to start back from square one.
Yeah.
And is there any appeal process or any?
Well, I have suggested that the ordinance could permit any project that was permitted under the prior ordinance. variance. That would be one option. An appeal, I don't know. My lawyer told me it's pretty clear. It expires. So
Don't hold your breath.
And the problem is that you're waiting for action from the PUC, which is.
And CMP.
And CMP.
NCMP.
So
So you're
that,
being held hostage by.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long wait.
well, and then, I mean, that's frustrating to me on your behalf.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you weren't doing due diligence, so the
Right.
fact that. So the fact that they then literally are making it so that you couldn't do this project no matter how this ended up.
Yeah, at one point, we put in a bid last summer in response to a request for proposals from the Maine Public Utilities Commission. And we were selected to be in the final group that would be, awarded a bid, sort of the final cut. And because we didn't have the interconnection agreement from Central Maine Power Company, ultimately we weren't awarded that contract. And so now CMP has offered us an interconnection agreement, which if this gets worked out here, so that we could do the project, we would probably enter into an interconnection agreement with CMP and be ready to submit a bid the next time.
But at this point, you would have to
Well, this-
abide by the old ordinance or the new ordinance, or.
At this
or-
point, yeah.
Or who knows? It'd have to be determined.
It appears that I have to reapply under the new ordinance, unless you approve otherwise. And my attorney recommended trying to get your approval for that. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Peter,
I just wanted to provide a little bit of context too, for Steve's application. I know I felt that when it was approved originally, that should the other things fall into place, that it would proceed just as normal, right? The 12-month part about the extensions that we're talking about, that was put in there originally for sort of traditional stuff, like brick and mortar type building stuff where someone is either doing something or they're not. And the idea was to not have those things be just languish out there. And so I just wanted to mention that.
Right.
That was
And so,
how that came to be.
yeah, so here's someone who's being penalized for
so if
Yeah.
other,
no fault of his own.
yeah, if other permits are granted after the fact, is this a case in which a permit could be granted after the fact because it is through no fault of the developer on their own? George?
I don't have an answer to your question, but I did want to bring to your attention that in the course of Steve meeting with us, we obviously became aware of the realities of what it takes to bring one of these to pass, and the sort of the institutional barriers, if you will, at the PUC and at CMP that are, well beyond the capabilities of, it isn't anything that Steve or any other developer of solar facilities has any control over, or very little control over. And so what you'll find in our proposal is to increase the number of years that the lifespan of a permit from 1 to 3 years with another 12-month extension. Now, to be fair, that would apply to all development. So if somebody building a used car lot or an auto repair shop, they get the same deal. But that was in direct response to the issues that Steve brought to our attention, that we put that in the order. Unfortunately, his permit expired before we could bring this ordinance to you and hopefully at some point to the voters. The question in my mind is, and this was a question for the town attorney, is that project that's been permitted previously by the planning board under this ordinance, could it be offered the remaining of that total of 4 years lifespan of their permit? I don't know the answer to that question,
Right.
but I think that would be a question worth
Pursuing.
when the time comes, placing to the town attorney.
So right now, at this point, we're in a moratorium, so it's not like we could issue them another permit right now.
Danny?
Just as a comment, I have no kind of interest in this particular project. But in doing any ordinance development, you have to, I believe you should err on the side of, you should be conservative in how you approach it, because once a facility is built, even if you change the ordinance down the road, you have that facility. So it is, it's a big deal. Solar farms are a big deal in the state of Maine. We're getting a lot of comment about them, back and forth, so you have to get it right in the lack of evidence. My sense is you would be more conservative. We dealt with visual impacts in the air emission lights, and I want to tell you, it's not an easy thing. That's the big problem here. It's easier with air emissions than it is with something like that.
Yeah, so I
So
think,
Steve, is that something you could get to us in the next week or so we have time before the next meeting?
Yeah.
and
That would be
then,
helpful for me.
Denny, would you have time to check with Phil Saucier?
Yeah,
And
could you put the question down
Sure.
and send it to me in an email?
Let me just add that to my notes.
But just so we would have an answer for you if this is something that we
Yeah.
could legally do. And
That would be excellent.
Really, we need to make a decision August 2nd.
right. If
Needs
we're
to go
gonna
to the
stay with
attorney
this
August 3rd.
timeline, and if not, then we. You did. No, I'm just kidding.
I have a question.
Sure.
Thank you. I'm wondering, and I don't know, but is it possible that we could get a visual assessment of the property where the proposed solar array is to go? And I believe it was to cut out 70 acres, because when I looked at the I want to call it I don't know what it was, but it was a great presentation. There we go. When I looked at that presentation from New Gloucester, it seemed as though they could like cut out trees with their little mapping stuff, and they could give an evaluation of the property without trees, with shrubs, with roses, whatever the case may be, as I recall it. Could we possibly get a visual assessment before we even go ahead with this? It's just a question, and I pose it to everybody, including the planning board and Steve, if you have any information on that.
Well, yeah, I would even be willing to hire Dewan Associates or some other landscape architectural firm to undertake that. I don't know what the timeline would be, however. I'm pretty convinced that if you saw what this project would look like from Route 135, you'd say, oh, that looks great. I mean, this was always my goal, actually. I thought that this project would be kind of a model for what a successful solar project would look like. It might be visible. I still don't understand the 80% of what is what I really question. When you're moving down the road there, at certain points in time, you might see something. At other points in time, there's a 200-foot deep set of Christmas trees that are still there from when it was a Christmas tree farm that obscure most of the view already. We're talking about 2 little slots of view. I committed to a buffer strip there. We planted some of the trees. We would definitely fulfill our requirements. You know, as far as the abutter, we've planted 2 rows of pine trees there. They have a very thick buffer on their own property, plus about a 15-foot buffer on our property of dense woods. Right now, you can't even see where their house is from the field. When the leaves are off the tree, of the deciduous trees, yes, there is some like filtered view between the trees. We've planted more trees. We would plant even more trees that are there now. So I feel like, you know, if people could actually see what the project would look like, once those trees are planted and grow a few years, people wouldn't have a problem with it. So I can certainly contact them. I'd be happy to do that tomorrow and see what they say in terms of, you know, what it would take to get them to produce that kind of analysis as soon as possible.
George?
This is just a suggestion for Steve, to possibly wait with that, to get an answer to an attorney.
I was over here like, don't spend any more money just yet if you don't have to.
Well, I was gonna just find out how much it would cost, what the timeline would be.
Yeah.
Yes,
I mean, in a lot of ways, I should, for the record, say, I recused myself when we were reviewing Steve's application, because he and I are friends, or hopefully we will still be. You know, if you look at that from the perspective of the viewshed analysis, because it's relatively flat terrain, it's not visible from any of the lakes. A lot of those issues don't come to pass. The issues that came up before the planning board was the abutters were not happy. There was a fair amount of opposition. So don't think that everything is all roses here. There are going to be people, when we have these proposals, regardless of what this ordinance ever says, that are going to be unhappy. You know, people do not want large-scale development in their neighborhoods.
They, quite frankly, they called me at home and we talked for more than an hour. They were not happy at all.
Steve?
Yeah, I can understand their unhappiness. Their house is built maybe 100 feet from the property line or less. And they cut trees out to be able to view the meadow that I now own. And that's a bummer for them.
Yeah.
Eventually, what they'll see is just trees. It's mostly what they see right now, as a matter of fact, because there are, you know, it's pretty dense in there. But I can understand that, and I wish that their house was further away from property line. So that's the reality.
I wish my neighbor had put the Subaru on the other side of the trees that they have that would block it from my house. You can't see it from over there, but it looks great from my side.
To what extent should I
There's a
have
body in
to,
there.
yeah, to what extent should I have to curtail activities on my property because my neighbor can see it?
Right.
That's a question.
All right, George, we're gonna do one more and then we're gonna
Yeah,
bust in.
I was
because it's
just gonna say, that's sort
9:30.
of the crux of the issue with regard to abutting residential dwellings. Who do you want to have be responsible for providing the visual buffer? Is that really on the landowner, the person who's already living there, or is it on the commercial developer? In all other realms, the burden of proof is on, and the burden is on that commercial developer to meet those standards, you know, to mitigate, because that's what this ordinance is about. It's not about preventing, it's about mitigating the worst of the impacts of commercial development on abutters, the neighborhood, the community, and our environment and the lakes. So that's the crux of the issue with regard to screenings is who should be responsible? Does the responsibility go with the developer who's proposing this new development, or is it on the abutter? You
Because
know, I mean, in a lot of cases, we're gonna have dwellings that are far less than 100 feet from the property line and have no trees.
Right.
It's a point to consider. We're not, the ordinance isn't for this one project.
Right.
The ordinance is for any project that could come up that would have potential impacts on any other area. So you really have to think of it in that context, as much as there's a desire to support the effort for this particular project. Maybe it's really not about this project, it's about every project.
Well, and that's not what I was saying. I think when I was thinking about some of Steve's stuff, like, does it make sense that you have to have this buffer all the way around as preventative from any future development that might happen on a property that's not developed now? Or is the onus there to create the buffer from what exists now? And, you know, we're talking 20-year lifespan on the solar panels, so we're not like, and 100 years from now, you know?
Could be a lot longer than 20.
Right, but I'm just, you know, but I'm saying, you know, you can't anticipate, you know, 2 houses over from me, there's 311 acres up for sale. They could do whatever they want to, except there's a wildlife preserve on the back. So they would be prohibited from a certain point, but there's 311 acres there.
But that would probably be a good place right in the middle of it to put a solar farm. You wouldn't see it from anywhere.
So what are we gonna do with this? We've kind of been around the farm a couple times.
Well,
And
what we're doing, Rick, is we're finishing it up for tonight and we're moving on to the rest of the agenda.
but what I'm saying is I think we need to get some more information before we can make an educated decision on this.
Right.
So I would make the motion that we table this until we get the further information.
I'll second it.
Table it to the next meeting.
Table it to the next meeting.
We gotta make
Sure.
If we have the information, if not, we may have to do another moratorium. But we
Right.
make sure we get everything ducks in a row before we make. this.
I agree. So that's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none. Ricky,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Barbara.
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. Thank you, everyone, for
Yeah,
your
thank you, guys.
input, as always.
A lot of information.
A lot of hard
It's
work.
valued beyond measure.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay,
You guys
bye-bye.
too.
Thank you.
Okay,
Madam Chair, could I
yes.
suggest something? Could I suggest that the announcement or the update on the seasonal residence meeting on October 10th be taken up now? We have a lady here who's sitting solely for that purpose.
Yes. All right, I'll take them, yeah.
So moved.
Moved in second, we'll take it out of order.
Yeah,
Identify yourself.
oh yeah, when I printed out the agenda, I realized I already booked the Center for All Seasons on August 10th for a VHS program. I booked it June 7th. It's in the book. He signed everything. I don't know.
Dan, when I asked him, said everything was fine. And he accepts that. I mean, he's not hiding. He said I was screwed up. So the question is.
So
how
is
you
the
wanna handle
VHS
that?
event taking the gym area?
Yes, because it's a program on quilts.
Okay.
And we're gonna be putting out tables to put out, including a bicentennial quilt of Belgrade. The program is by Lori Labar, who's the curator at the Maine State Museum on 250 years of Maine quilts. Nice, the cook has a bicentennial quilt made by her mother that includes squares made all along the farms on the West Road, and she's gonna allow us to display it, and it's beautiful, and everybody should see it. It
On
hasn't
August
been out-
10th.
It hasn't been out in the public since 1997.
Nice.
So the proposal, at least when Mary brought this to my attention, the proposal was to hold the residents meeting here. Because you've already announced it, or to change the date, but it seemed like the 10th was the only date that you guys could get together.
Well, and then we originally had said for here, and then concerns were brought up with
Space.
space.
What about the 17th? What if we move it back a week? Or forward, backward, back, right?
We'll use the Belgrade Central School.
There you go.
Have to solve it all.
Unless they have something going on.
There you go.
On the 10th.
Gotta be something in the town that we can use of our own without using the school.
She's no Belgrade.
Not
Well,
big
we're
enough.
in
is
about
it?
the same space as here.
Smaller, that's.
Yeah.
that's small.
Probably got room enough right there at the town office.
Might, well, I was gonna say, you
What
might
about-
be able to borrow the MLRC.
What about August 15th? Do we look at other
I
dates?
just
Yeah, you
think, I
guys
just
do.
think go here.
Yeah, just move it to here, and if we have overflow.
Okay.
If,
um,
you know, if we have too many department chairs, so we bring them in one at a time and send them out.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, you can run like the wind now, girl.
It's like a,
I had already sent the publicity out to about sometime in the Belgrades, but.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know.
No, it was our mistake.
okay,
No, it was Dan's.
thank you.
Just
That's
kidding.
what happens. Crazy year.
I'm just kidding. Just trying to get all of that under control over there, I
Yep,
think
and
is.
that's- so I was okay with that.
All right, so does anyone want to take a 30-second stretch your legs break?
Yeah.
Just
Yes.
wanna- Okay, take a motion that we take a 2-minute break.
All right.
Moved and seconded, all those in
I'll do
favor?
the second.
I think I'll get something.
Stretch for a minute.
That's what I thought you were gonna ask for.
I was gonna go out to dinner, and I said, no. I forget these meetings. Oh,
Forget how much fun they are.
And I picked up how heavy that book was, I was like,
I know one thing, I really don't want a second guess the planning board on.
You want to shut that off?
Shut it off if you want with Dennis.
No, I'm not. I don't care. I've got nothing to say.
You want to shut your recording off while you're wandering around or? No? Okay. Yeah, it's still picking up sound, so.
Let me turn it up. I see everybody home, it's like, ah, it's nice.
Yeah, I'm fine. It's great. You have to be outside. I get to go home and change and take a shower.
Oh, wow, somebody really turned it down.
what's it on now?
66.
Probably because,
I'll put it up to 68.
well, probably because it was what, 91 today, I think. So they were like, we better cool that room off. Yeah, because on the way out, I was like, should I grab a sweater? I was like, "Nah, still 86 or something when I left. I'm like, good.
If you forget that. I got people working
Right, right now that
week.
this is working and it's not 90 degrees in every spot in the building. Well, because it's locked out there too, and that one was set too, so Mary was like, are we not grown-ups? Can we unlock this one? Because they were freezing out there the other day when I came in.
Oh, well, they have the same thermostat. I haven't been able to find that now in the office. When Anthony said I couldn't find it because they literally, in the summertime, it was 61 out there. But then in the wintertime, it was 78.
So that's why it's low.
I believe your boy has been there 15 years.
Yes. Three grandkids.
He had a Belgrade fire department. He
Yeah,
was very dear.
yeah, he's married, yeah, married on that one.
All right, we ready to get back at it?
Yep.
Oh, he got back.
All right, so next up on the agenda is the request to purchase and place a bench in Belgrade Lakes Village.
Yeah.
Ricky's still not back.
And, oh, sorry, Rick.
Suffers from the same dilemma that all older folks.
No, he's probably getting some something to eat.
He's gonna be over there like, I'm having dinner. What are you guys doing?
There's my beer and popcorn.
That's what we line up. If I can find the beer. And the popcorn.
That's what he's
You could
saying.
stop at Irving, they'll have some.
Actually, I stopped there, I tried to stop there maybe I just didn't realize that the lights inside shut down. It looked like it was closed.
Irving?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Irving and
Maybe I'll
Augusta?
No? Okay.
They may not have much to eat. They might have some sandwiches.
They have some.
Yeah.
You're gonna get another yogurt. So it's gonna-
Yeah, it's better than yogurt.
Go up to the new Mexican restaurant. They might still be open.
Margaritas,
No, not margaritas. El Agave. Up where,
Oh, El
Ruby
Agave.
Tuesday
Oh,
used to
yeah,
be.
oh, look.
That's one of the best Mexican
Yeah,
restaurants.
I've been to. That's pretty good.
Yeah, kids. is-
But They close by. Don't
They
they
say
shut down
most of them
for
close by
dinner?
like
I don't
10.
know. I don't know.
I think they do.
The kids said it's wicked good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is. I've been there.
Yeah. Yep, it is good. Been a couple times.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep going without Rick for now. He should be, I'm assuming he'll be back any second. All right, so I'll take a motion to open that item.
So moved.
Moved by Carol, seconded by Barbara.
Okay, I don't understand why this is on our agenda, because this is a project of the Friends of Belgrade Lakes Village, and
Probably because they want to place it on town property.
because what?
They want to place it on town property.
They want to place it. in the village.
No, they
At the
want to
village
place
green.
it in Peninsula
By
Park,
day
by
store.
day store.
But even so, I mean, all the benches, regardless of where they've been located, this was all arranged and organized by the Friends of Belgrade Lakes Village. So
That's true, but the Friends donated that property to the town of Belgrade. Peninsula Park, of course, was the Belgrade property. So I believe that that it becomes in the purview of the board to make decisions about what's placed in those properties.
I know, but there's a process that there are, as I understand it, there aren't any more benches right now available. All the benches have been spoken for. There's like one lamppost left,
There's
right?
one
Bill?
lamppost that's not been
Well,
taken.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not arguing against one way or another. All I'm saying is it is town property, and I think the board has to.
No,
Well, that's what I
I'm
think.
sorry, I don't want to speak after.
But
I'm no longer on the Friends, so.
no, I appreciate that issue, but placing, it would be like me coming in and saying, I wanted to put a bench in Peninsula Park without even knowing, even before the Friends were around. I would have to come to the town. So it's that kind of issue, so. And I don't think the town has a policy about placement of these kinds of items. I know Old Orchard Beach town has, it's not dozens, well, hundreds, if not hundreds, many dozens of these benches placed all along the beach. And that requires approval. So
Well,
that's the issue.
yeah, I think that if this is gonna be discussed, we should have the Friends of Belgrade Lakes Village here to discuss it. So I would move that we table this, if we're going to entertain, that we table it for until the next meeting when we can have the Friends here to discuss it.
Why can't we just put it back to the friends who've done all the fundraising,
Fine
who've
with
been
me.
involved with the benches, the fundraising for the benches, the lamp posts, the bike racks, the ordering of all those, the placement of them. I just don't see this as a town issue when there already is a program that was ongoing, so.
So,
I'll weigh in on this, I guess. I don't think that should be happening in putting town, a bench that somebody privately buys on town property. I don't think you got any right to do that. And all this benefit in these Belgrade Lakes. You got to look at the other end of town, the whole town of Belgrade. What are they getting out of it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And using town property. So my say to this is no.
The issue here is the placement of a request by an individual to place something on town property for use by town residents. That's why I say there's no policy for this. So individually, they get brought to the board. Certainly, if you had a policy or an individual wanted to, they could ask for the placement of a bench at the North Belgrade Community Center. They could do that, or any other facility. Like you might need benches down at Peninsula Park or any one of the parks that we have. I mean, that's the request.
Bench costs $5,000. Why are they charging 10? I don't get that.
Well, the bench doesn't cost $5,000.
Well, the bench costs less than 5,000 when we bought them in bulk 4 years ago through the state. And then they have to be installed and then you have to put the plaques on. So I don't know what they would cost if we did that again. The lamp posts were 10,000. That's what the 10,000 was, Rick. So, I mean, I think if the town wants to have a policy, then the town needs to go to maybe Parks and Rec and decide, do we want to do this? Where do we want to do it? What places might be available? Or does the town just want to say, no, we're not doing this?
I agree. I don't disagree.
But
so did this person get in touch with you, Carol? Because it
I'm
looked
sorry?
like Mary directed him to talk to
he
you.
never, she did not give him my phone number and he never emailed me.
And and he could have been told right away. Well, he never contacted you.
He never contacted me, contacted Mary.
Because
She told him
Well,
that there
he
wasn't a bench.
contacted- He
The benches
contacted
were
the town
5,000.
office.
Oh, Mary's on? Okay.
So he contacted the town office and requested to put a bench. I don't believe initially he said, I want a bench in this park. It looks like
No,
he said, we're not fussy on location. We want a bench. How about the park right next to Day's store? We want a bench.
Yeah,
I'm ready to pay now.
that's essentially what he said. I mean.
That-
essentially
that-
he
That's
said, I don't
exactly
want
what he said. He said, we're not fussy on location. How about the
it. He
park
wants
right
to
next to Day's
memorialize
store?
his wife with a bench.
Right.
Right,
but
so-
he wants-
How
But he
about the
wants-
playground at the North Belgrade Community Center?
But he wants to because there are all those other benches around. And that was done through the Friends as fundraising for,
Not
you know,
arguing against that at all.
for all those amenities. And that project is, hoping to enter a second phase. So it just doesn't seem to me as if it's right for the town to get involved in someone who wants to,
we're
work
not-
outside the system.
Well, I don't know about the system other than the Friends have set up an approach for fundraising, all right? And I don't know about, all I'm saying is for him to place a piece of property or a thing, a donation for you to have the town accept it. Should have to go forward. Right?
Because irregardless, so I guess I thought about this and I talked about this and thought about it for another 2 days. It's the town's property, so whoever is fundraised for it, we own the parks.
Right.
We own the property. So we are the ones who decide if we ultimately, and I don't want to be like the town steps in and, like we started our own fundraiser to do a different memorial than the one that was proposed for here. They asked permission to put it on town property. So there was private fundraising. It was going to be put on town property and then become property of the town. It's the exact same process, irregardless of who does the fundraising.
That's what I thought.
So, and I feel like it should be, because, I don't think that anyone's trying to usurp anything. And I don't think in reading his response, and he beat feet from the meeting, but I don't see that he was demanding that it be put down in the village, because he wasn't. He was like, we don't really care where, we just want a bench and we'd like it on town property.
Well, it does say on here.
Well, then,
We'd like to consider donating a bench to the available location in downtown Belgrade.
where's that?
That's at the very end. That was his first email.
I
Okay,
think there was even reference to there's space in the village green or something like that, but I'm not sure.
donating a bench at an available location.
But essentially, it's a request.
Well, and then,
Can I ask?
and we
one
don't
more
know,
question?
if it's gonna be 5,000 either.
Oh, the question about price is irrelevant. I mean, ultimately, you bear the cost, right? The question I have is, what was, because I can't remember, and I remember all this going about when I was last town manager. What was the ultimate agreement on the remaining benches and stuff with the town?
What was the,
Well, yeah, I mean, you have 5 locations for 5 more benches, or you got what?
we don't have 5 more locations. We have
Whatever.
5 people who would like benches if we could find place for them.
Right, so there was no, I mean, was there an agreement on how that was going to place or anything?
No, the benches, when the benches were placed, they were placed on the property
Prior to the donation.
prior to the donation. So they came, the property was donated to the town
Yeah.
with them intact.
Yeah.
And that's why we haven't gone and found locations, but if we go to phase 2, we'll be looking to raise money. We have 5 people waiting to say, I really want a bench. I should have gotten one when there are benches available.
Maybe 6.
Maybe 6, but, so, I mean, my answer is we need to say, no, the town isn't doing it.
I mean, I don't have a problem with benches being put around, as long as some of the other, down to Workman's Field maybe gets one. The North Belgrade Community Center at the playground gets one. Some of these other places, so that it does make all the residents feel like.
And I don't disagree with you. I think it needs to go to, somebody needs to decide where in town are their locations that the town is willing to put benches
And
on.
maybe park and recs. If people.
So it needs to go to Park and Rec to figure those out. And then the part that that was a fundraising piece that raised well over $600,000 to put all the amenities in. So I think the Friends should be here is part of that discussion if that's going to happen, which is why I wanted to table it.
I move that we table any further discussion to the next meeting of the Friends.
And some maybe from the Board of Parks and Recreation, because if we're gonna boot something back to them possibly.
I'm involved, so.
So I'll second the tabling. Well, either the next meeting or maybe even the one after that. If the next one, the
You're
next
gonna
one's
be-
gonna be too heavy and we keep.
Too
I'm
heavy.
gonna try to keep the next meeting light because of the discussion
On the water.
surrounding the
Ordinance.
ordinance.
Yeah,
And we also have the water thing too, right?
no, because even I think at the last one, we said, certain things would be at a future meeting and they're on this one. So I'm like, no. A little
Well,
more
and
in
then the town
future.
needs to decide if they want to be in that, if they want. to have things on property. But that's part of that whole discussion.
Because then that becomes the maintenance of it as well. You know. So. All right, so table, yep, so we've got a motion and a second. Rick? This is on the tabling.
Yes.
Okay, Barbara,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. We'll table that to one of the next couple of meetings.
Well, and then we just need to let Mr. Beck know that it is being tabled.
Yes. I think Mary had said in her note, Tim, we'd have an answer after the meeting. We just said, no, we need a little more time. All right, so discussion of creating a facilities maintenance committee. That I had asked to be put on here, not realizing quite how cattywampus this was till it all came out. I'm gonna make a request that we table that till a future meeting.
Second that motion.
Okay,
Can I just comment one thing on it?
Nope.
Can you involve the cemetery committee when you do have that at the next meeting, so the cemetery committee is involved in that also?
sure. Okay,
And we're just saying to a future meeting. we're not
to a
saying
future
the next
meeting, not to the next one. Could be sometime in September.
Yeah, we'll probably be better off once we get.
The facilities
Just so you can
maintenance
express
director.
that.
Yep.
New facilities director.
Which will get the skinny on that. Okay, so motioned and seconded on the tabling on that. Ricky,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses, let's table that one. All right. Next up, interim town manager. So Denny will be beating feet here at the end of July. No matter who we hire, we won't have anyone who comes on August 1st. So I want to size up from the board what your thoughts are on for interim town manager.
Now legally, we do need to have somebody with that title as interim town manager.
Well, there are certain duties that.
Right, I think we probably have to have, yeah.
I'm gonna make a motion that we put Mary Vogel in as interim town manager until we get a new town manager hired.
I will second it. We hadn't asked Mary, and so we also have to ask Mary, but we also had to make an agreement as a group to do that.
But she's on here right now. I see she is. I bet she'll give us an answer, yay or nay.
Mary, do you want to be put on the spot like that?
Sure. So it already is in my job description that I am backup interim town manager as town clerk. So yeah, as long as it's temporary.
Okay, can we make that official from August 1st until whenever?
Oh, if it's,
As
if
long
she's
as
already
it's-
on there,
Yeah,
if she's already, then it ought to be in, that she'll be the interim if she leaves or whatever.
Yeah, because I think, does it say as acting town manager, Mary, or does it say as
It says
interim?
interim, that was
It
what-
does say interim. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so moved by Ricky, seconded by me. Any further discussion? And she's in agreement. So Barbara,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Rick.
Yes,
All right. 5 yeses. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Mhm.
thank you.
All right. Next up, we have town office closure, July 27 from 1 to 4 PM. Tria was moving everything from one server to the town's new server. Take a
Make that
motion to
motion.
open that item.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. It's open.
I'll
Now,
make the motion that we do it.
and
Second.
moved in, seconded. So does staff need to be here while that's going
They're
on?
gonna be here from 1, or from 8 to noon or 1, whatever that starts. They can do nothing.
Well, they catch up on file, things
Yeah, we
like
can do
that.
some of that.
we can catch up. Yeah, we can catch up on file. We can't be open to customers. So we will have to close the office to customers.
Okay,
If you guys get bored, I think they got some extra lawnmowers at the cemetery.
Oh, weed
Or
whacking's
I-
more fun.
We need
So
somebody
we could
else at the
follow that
transfer
number.
station too.
Then
All
I
right,
had to
so
shut down
moved
a
and,
couple of the
moved and seconded. All those in favor. Ricky, I think you'd already jumped in with a yes.
Yes.
Okay, Dan,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Barbara.
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. All right, Town of Rome. Take a motion to open that item.
So moved.
All right, moved and seconded. That's open for discussion. So the Town of Rome, we have an agreement with that if their town office is closed for whatever reason, that the town of Belgrade assists them, so, and they pay us to handle their registrations, like, we get their kickback on that, right?
So that, the agreement attached.
So we'll get the agent fees.
The agent fees, right, so this would be for September 6th to September 16th.
Correct.
If you want, if you approve, then I'll sign the local agreement.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we approve that agreement with the Town of Rome from September 6th to September 16, 2022.
Second.
Do you want to sign one going the other way for that day that trios being done, in case someone can just say the registration?
Then go online.
Right.
A lot of that stuff is.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this won't be, because our trio thing is July 27th. We're just signing this on the 19th, but it doesn't go with
No, I'm saying
September.
we could send them over between 1 and 4.
Oh, yeah, I gotcha.
Have Rome take care of stuff for us.
That's right. All right, so moved and seconded. Barbara,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. We'll tell Rome we'll help him out one more time. All right, town manager report.
You want it to be happen before the.
Oh, hang on, warrant. All right, next up, we have the warrant. And do you have the official copy, Denny? Okay, so it is warrant number 82 and the amount of $55,203.10.
I'll make that motion.
All right, that is open for discussion. So I did take a phone call today from Christine Polson, who's mitigating the lineup for the musicians. And she was concerned because the ones who played for the first concert hadn't been paid yet. So I did get my warrant out on my phone and I let her know that they were on this warrant. So she then requested, and I said, it does look like your fees being paid upfront for the 9 shows and the coordination. So I said, one of the questions that was probably going to come forward was if, like, Denny Bro wasn't able to perform because the storm, and then even after the storm was over, there was no power because he was on his way to perform when this happened. So what Christine had made for an agreement with them last year was that they would continue essentially and play in September if they'd agreed to play previously and were rained out. However, now the concern is that then they would have to essentially hold 2 spots in their gig schedule in case one got rained out. So I said, well, the flip side of that is if we pay someone and they didn't provide the service. So I said, that will be the part that we need to sort of answer to the taxpayers for. So she said, well, they rely on the gig income. He was on his way. So I feel like we owe it to him to pay him for that because it wasn't his fault he didn't perform. So I said, well, I will put that out there for the board to think about. I said, it is on the warrant for this evening. She had requested perhaps like a chunk of money and they just pay them up front. But I said, it's not normally a practice in municipal government to prepay for services. I said, we could pay all these people and then they all don't show up. So I said, I explained, I said, we had a similar situation where someone who was contracting work for the town requested to be paid 50% up front. And we said, that's not a policy in municipal. We're happy to work with them on that, but so she did understand that. She said she would kind of try to talk to them and just let them know, this is where it was at. She was more worried about, they're used to getting paid on the spot or whatever, and then for them to wait a couple of weeks. She said, she would try to work on that with them. So that's something I know. There's someone in, Lynn Matson apparently is trying to start more of a fundraiser to get like a matching grant. Like, so for the first 5,000, if somebody will match it with 5,000, it would be a $10,000 pot of money to pay for that. And it wouldn't come out of the town specifically. So that maybe we could consider that policy in the future, doing something a little bit different. But I did tell her I would let the board know the concerns. And she said, Melanie, if you want to hold my check to pay the others, I'm fine with that. So,
Good question. We don't want to pay people up front in case they don't show up or whatever. Could she submit a bill, have us, the week, the board member meeting before? We cut the check and she holds the check. And then they could pay them that night. And if they don't show up, the check comes back to the town.
that's possible. She did say that what she had done, she said, doing I forgot how she phrased it, but essentially creating invoices for the town. She goes, this is not my forte. She said, I'm a musician, trying to get that stuff organized in some sort of an invoice form, she said was foreign to me. But that she did say that she got invoices for each of them to Dan yesterday or today. So she said, I just wanted to, just put a bug in the board's ear, to see that's something that could be considered. So that's definitely,
I
something.
mean, if it's legal, that would be the way to do it, because,
Can we-
you just
can we-
authorize the payment up front, and then if they don't show up or it gets canceled, they just don't get the check. It comes back to the town before the check.
See, but her take is that if it gets canceled, we should pay them anyway if it's not their fault that they
Right.
don't perform.
Yeah, that's a lot to work out.
Right, so that's.
I mean, if we're not willing to pay them, if they get rained out, then we're not gonna have any concert series,
Right.
Well,
And I think they fill in it best they can if they can.
I know,
Yeah,
you're sighing
yeah,
I'm just
too, it's kind
thinking-
of a,
if I'm on my way to work, and the snowstorm comes, and I can't, for whatever reason, the office closed, I don't get paid for that.
Some places do, some places don't.
right,
In municipal
That's a decision
government,
for the board.
I think in municipal government, it's harder to do that. Private entity, yeah, you can make the decision. Taxpayer money, I think it's a lot harder to do that.
I have a
And
hard
she-
time believing that private, like a bar or something, if they cancel out, they don't pay them. They don't come play. I mean, it's business. It's what,
But
it-
Well, if they don't
It's not
come-
their fault.
If they don't come play, that's their choice, but if
What happens? if
they're
the bar
there
has
and the
power?
music, it's raining.
yeah, what happens if the bar loses its power?
They pay them, or do they pay
I
them
don't
full
think
amount,
so.
or is
Well,
there-
they would
or
pay
is there
them
a
because they're
set fee
there.
that they pay them for not being able to do it?
Well, that would depend on the contract, and probably the easiest or best way to handle this is to have a contract that specifies how you want to handle it.
right,
And then the contract, we follow the contract.
Right.
So if the contract says, and the town agrees to pay people if circumstances result where they cannot play due to circumstances not under their control, then you pay them. I mean, it's pretty cut and dried that way. So I would say, hey, let's,
then maybe one,
Christine, develop a contract that basically would force us to pay in the event that someone can't play due to circumstances beyond their control.
And it would be good to have a contract.
Yeah.
Because we're contracting the services.
Yes, that's exactly right.
But Christine's probably not the one that's gonna write that up. Maybe is it possible to check with Oakland and see what they do in their concert series? Because they may very easily have a contract. I mean, Christine said, that's not who I am.
right,
So
Yeah.
I think we need to help out and see if we can get a contract maybe from Oakland.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They've been
see-
doing it for
see
quite a
how
while.
Oakland handles it.
Right.
Yeah.
Waterville has
Whether
a
they-
series.
Whether
Waterville
they pay
House.
them the full amount, or whether they pay them a portion, or
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, what's been explained to me in the past, and the business group ran into this, was they say, okay, we're coming here, we're expecting that work. And if something happens and they can't do it, otherwise they'll book someplace else where they'll agree to pay them, so that you're not going to get your talent.
Right.
And that, they're self-employed, so that's the way it works.
I'll check it open.
I have a great suggestion, though. If Danny Bro is available on the day before, the day of the beat hole dinner, maybe he'd play in the afternoon at the park as a makeup. And then people could go to the beat hole dinner and get beans.
Well, because I did ask her about moving it to the Center for All Seasons, and she said nobody goes really. She said like 4 people go and they were family members.
I was gonna say, I went a couple times and it rained and there were 20 people there.
Yeah.
I believe they got somebody coming to play at the Beano spot.
Not in the park ahead of time. I think they usually have the gollards there that night.
Yeah.
I know the park's empty because I talked to Dan yesterday.
All right, did anybody else have anything on the
I
warrant?
think we bought another hand truck. Didn't we just talk about them buying a dolly on one of the last ones?
Mhm.
I said we didn't have a
And then we
dolly.
had a dolly
Now there's a,
available.
now there's a hand truck on.
Where's the hand truck?
Bob picked up the first one when he went to get a file cabinet.
Yeah, and I think we asked him about that
That's right.
last Warren or so, because he said, I thought we had one, but we couldn't find it. And now there's
That's
another
right.
one here.
Right,
It's second page.
so now we have 2 hand trucks?
I can't answer that question. I'll give you that answer tomorrow.
One at the Center for All Seasons and one here.
Yeah, then it could be, rather than chasing one all the time, it's just. This one's under facilities again, too.
Yeah.
We got another Adobe thing in there too. I don't know how many of them we got.
Well, so
It's
it
every
looks
month.
like it's 3 every month. So I'm wondering if we contact Adobe and say, we just pay you for a year in advance, can we get a discount? Because the fact it's not part of our IT services and we need to have it in order to perform.
Right, so Nick's looked into that and it's been a problem, but no, we get billed monthly for the 3. And I guess that's the only way that he can do it. And we have to have Adobe for our programs out front.
Right, so that's why I was wondering, well, because clearly that, our IT service is not going to provide, and we do need to have it. So can we, if we pay for a full year, is there any sort of a discount? If Nick can maybe just check into that? I
I'll
mean,
ask,
if we save a month's cost over the course of it, it's a little bit of a savings and.
I'll ask him.
This one is something else on here.
I see we're paying for the light fixture that the state trooper ran over. Is it the state paying us back for that one, or the insurance company or something?
Because I didn't know.
Page 5, light fixture, Main Street.
They were waiting for a bill, was the last time I heard,
Okay.
because they couldn't reimburse till we'd actually paid.
Okay.
So there's 2 insurance companies involved. One's the state police and one is whoever Peter Lloyd has for insurance company.
So is that,
So they're 2 separate claims.
So do we have to bill, who do we have to bill, or is
I don't know how
Or
it
they
was
just
left
put
with
it
the
in there?
adjuster. I can't answer that question.
well, our insurance company must be involved somewhere?
I don't know that.
I don't know.
can't.
We just need to make sure that the bill goes somewhere, so we just.
And
Well, we're
the
not-
generators of Maine will have an installation charge. I don't know. Was it in here?
Oh, I saw something.
I was thinking something was, but there'll be a installation charge as well.
The only thing I see is a light fixture, unless that's included with it.
Oh, it's down at the bottom of page 4, is generators of Maine.
Yeah, that's the next page.
Oh, that's the
That's
fixture.
the fixture.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
garage lights, so I don't know if the
So I-
installation's part of it or not, so.
It shouldn't be.
Dennis should have the original bill, should specify whether it is or not over there, so.
But they did have, at one point, both claims were set up, so.
So, and then I noticed on this one that we paid mosquito banditos for the Center for All Seasons, and on the last warrant, ticked off was also paid for the Center for All Seasons.
I'm sorry.
So on this warrant, mosquito banditos was paid for the Center for All Seasons spray. On the last warrant, I remember ticked off was paid for the Center for All Seasons. So I know the first round, when they did the tick spraying, they ticked off was not instructed to go to the Center for All Seasons. So I recommended mosquito banditos, and it looks on the last one, I remember signing it that we paid ticked off, and it was just for the Center for All Seasons.
Okay, I'll have to check.
So
into that.
now we've paid two entities to do the same thing, it appears. So I know there was the brown tail moth issue at the Center for All Seasons too, so I'm not sure if they had mosquito banditos spray the trees for that. And I don't know if there's anything on the invoice there.
I'll check it. That's on page what?
That is on page 6.
Modern Pest Services.
It'll be right after that, mosquito banditos. But I just remember it from the last one, because I thought, oh, they did go over there and do it.
Okay, it says spray 2.525 acres spray. It sounds like mosquitoes to me.
Oh, it's usually the tick spraying. Can I just, I'm gonna sneak a peek at it then.
Yeah, take a look at it, 'cause you know, I didn't-
They've done like a couple of times, so. Okay, so we didn't have any the same way that I do, which is this one, it's like a straight. But Target has two ticks and mosquitoes, ticks and mosquitoes. So that's not the brown tail, so it does look like we paid two companies to do the same.
I'm sure it works on brown tail moths too.
Well, only if they get up in the trees. So
That's
that's where they would have come in, because they'll come in, they've got this power sprayers on their back, and they'll do the trees for the brown tail moth, which are really bad over the Center for All Seasons, by the way. Those caterpillars are everywhere.
yeah. Well, I remember I posted something about many years, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, saying, see what you can do to take care of it.
Well, and I keep asking them to make sure we have something up on the website that kind of announces. I think we got it on Facebook
Yeah,
and
I
stuff
think
this
I had
year.
Mary put something up on just a bit ago,
Yeah,
but I think that was about the ash forest.
Yeah.
yeah. All right, anybody else have anything on the warrant? Seeing none. I'll make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, Ricky? Dan?
Yeah.
Carol?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses, the warrant is good. Now town manager report.
And this will be real quick, just to note that the Center for All Seasons on August 6th, will be hosting Fire and Rescue Association meeting dinner at 5 to 7. Of course, something you didn't know. But the other thing is the safety penalty, I passed on the message that they will only reduce it by 90%. We virtually have all that stuff taken care of. The final paperwork should be going into the state. And so we'll end up having to pay somewhere around $560, I think. But almost all of the issues have been resolved and the paperwork resolved. That's that. And the only other thing I have is an issue that I want to bring up in executive. It involves a personnel. So.
Any update on the hiring of facilities maintenance director?
That's the update that I want to.
Okay, perfect. And okay. All right, if that is everything, I will take.
Oh, Melanie, you know what? And it's totally out of order, but we all went and saw the Dalton property,
Yes. I have all
and
the
it's
pictures.
absolutely atrocious. And I would think we should ask our rental agent not to try to rent it until we get it looking.
Did you go in? I did.
We did.
Awful.
So I took a bunch of
Disgusting.
pictures, and what I was gonna do was when we had a conversation about it, put all the pictures together for everyone because
It's bad.
it's bad.
Disgusting.
It's bad, and I wouldn't pay $1,800 to rent that property. I wouldn't pay a
I
grand.
know,
to rent-
we were up there, Carol. It did look-
The outside was bad, the inside was
Inside is
worse.
worse.
So I just like, I mean, I don't know how we do that, but I mean, I don't want to be a slumlord. We should not have been trying to rent
So, I don't disagree. So we do have, I mean, we're losing money every month that we don't get that rented. So there is money coming in that we, I don't know what the cost will be to do what has, I don't know what has to be done.
15 to 20,000.
As long as.
You know, and I don't know that it need, you know, I don't know if we do a complete overhaul right now, but there's probably at least 10 grand that needs to get into that.
Don't we
You
have
know.
reserve money? Didn't we spend some of it in the budget and there's other money in the Dalton Reserve
Well,
Fund?
there's no, as I understand it, the Dalton Reserve Fund was moved into the maintenance reserve.
Mhm.
Was
And
all of it
that-
moved?
Yes.
And that we are accumulating money every month from the Dalton 10 property. I think it's Dalton 10.
Yes,
The next
you're right.
one.
That's the apartment.
So, yeah, the apartment above the garage. So we are accruing money there every month, and we had accrued some money from the previous renter that moved out. 4 months
Yeah.
ago. So there is some money there. The question is, how do we decide, who decides what to get rid of it?
Well, and if the Board of Parks and Rec wants to be involved, you know, I'm fine. I know they like to sign off on some stuff because
Is
does that
is the
technically,
Dalton rental property on there?
Well,
under
Yeah,
their-
I don't think the
No.
Board of Parks and Rec should be involved.
No, I think it was primarily the board. When
so,
I say the board of selectors.
right,
I would think we could get someone in there, give us a quote, give a couple of quotes on it, see what it would be to.
Well, what I do, my suggestion would be send Bruce down, get a list of stuff he thinks that needs to be fixed, or get a price from them. Have Dan McKenzie go down for the electrical, anything needs to be fixed down there for the electrical, and then find a carpenter, painter, whatever, to go in and give us the estimate on the rest of it.
Yeah, that's what I
Well,
was
'cause
gonna say,
there's
maybe
stuff,
Ryan would go in.
you know, like, we're
estimate.
walking up and I'm like, there is an electrical strip attached to the outside of the building, right where it's gonna get wet from the rain. That was the first thing I was like,
It's okay if it's plugged into a GFI outlet, though.
I was like, why is this here?
Yeah, there's wallpaper that needs to be stripped off and
Well,
wallpaper
I'll tell you
coming
something.
down.
Right,
I
it's
know
very
what the place
shabby.
looks like. It's-
To tell you, from my perspective, I'm just gonna give you a personal view, and I don't live in Belgrade, even though I think so. Property tax. I would tear that facility down. That's me.
Tear it down and have a park.
I would just. But it's a personal belief, and I understand why the town did it. It does make the town money, sometimes needed money. And, but I just don't think we should be renting properties. That's me. I said that all.
Well, I mean, we would make back the, if we put 10 grand in what, 6 months, we've made that money back.
That's the
So,
whole logic behind. renting
and then if we
properties.
decide to tear it down, we've broken even. But
Right.
it is just disgusting. I'm embarrassed to know that we even have it being shown. So I think we should
Bring it off the market.
cease and desist is my
Let it go off the
recommendation.
market.
Unfortunately, it's been like that for several years.
Yeah, it's just,
I
it's
would
awful.
probably, well, we need to decide as a board if we take it off the market now. While
And hopefully
we,
get it back and see if we can get it fixed in a month.
You'll never get that set up.
well, we've got to have, I mean, there was already money in the budget on that roof, so somebody's gonna get in there and finish that roof. That
Right.
is a whole, just beautiful show by
No,
itself.
that from now on, anytime a tenant leaves, we need to go in and see if there's any painting or whatever.
Paint it.
That is
Absolutely.
what the rental The company is supposed to be short.
They're
How they
supposed to,
can think we can rent that for $1,800 a month, I could not.
and it wasn't cleaned after these people left. There was mouse droppings
That's
in
all
every
up
drawer.
to, I can't believe,
There
well, I
is,
will talk to
the insulation downstairs is hanging and there are rodent nesting spots and poop areas in the insulation in that basement that's hanging down. There,
No, it's worse than it was since the last time I was in there.
It's nasty, it's nasty.
yeah, it's nasty.
So
Yeah,
can we
so
take
why
any
people
action
were
on
in there
this?
wasn't
Can we take any action on this tonight or?
well,
Well,
you could actually ask to remove it from the market. I mean,
Yeah.
I can just call them up and say, we don't want us to show that, we want you to get it fixed.
Yeah.
Right.
so I move, we remove it, make a motion, we remove it from the market until we get it
But
repaired.
let's find out what it's gonna cost, and then we'll make a decision, or whether or not we're gonna repair it.
Well, I think we
Maybe.
need to remove it from the
Right.
market until
Right,
it's,
Right.
because we don't want to have a tenant in there.
Right, no, I say
And
remove it from the
then-
market, and let's start finding out what's gonna cost us.
Okay, I second removing it from the market.
okay,
Temporarily.
So we find out what it would cost. to
Yeah.
get it fixed.
Yeah.
The other thing you guys need to do is, if you wanna get $1,800 from that, you gotta clean it up around it.
get a what?
Clean this mess up around the outside of it.
Oh, yeah, it's awful.
Also, horrible.
Yeah,
Also, I don't know if I'd allow the storage of the tires in the cart there.
I mean, once we finish this one, then we need to look at the
And
other
what
one.
are
'cause
all
that
those
was one
black
check.
barrels out back?
What?
What is in the black barrels?
What is what?
What is in all the black barrels?
They probably are empty.
Yeah.
No idea.
A lot
They
of
were all
stuff.
in the garage.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I'm getting tired.
Yep, moved and seconded.
It's
All
way
right,
past my.
all those in favor, Ricky,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes,
Barbara,
Yes.
Carol.
Yes,
All right, 5 yeses. Let's take it off the market. And Bruce, would you give us an estimate on what you can do over there?
That's the idea.
I don't know if you have the key that fits, but Denny and I went down the first time, the key didn't work. Kenny brought a new key over that we got from,
The town office,
Yeah,
number
Debbie.
55.
so if you're holding one, it may not work.
All right, I am holding it, so.
Oh,
You want key number 55.
you don't have that whole chain of keys to half the houses in town?
He's even got a code to my house.
all right,
Okay.
All right, trying to make a motion, we take 30 seconds between this and executive session.
This can stay. This is-
All right, night, Bruce, thank you.
Night, Bruce.
Jesus.
Take a motion to adjourn.
I so
So
moved.
bad.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, Dan,
yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.